I
Did you send her money?
I can't help but laugh my ass off every time. Tanner's one of the only people I know that says houseless.
Like home instead of
Like,
homeless.
Yeah, he says
that
instead of
isn't
homeless.
like a media or politician or a media wonk.
I know.
Houseless is so stupid.
I know. It's like, okay, is that how much more like sensitive is that really? Like,
No, I don't know. It's one of those things where like the people use that language and it makes nobody but them feel better, you know? Because they're like, oh,
the homeless guy's
I mean,
like, oh, thank God I feel better about my predicament.
No, it literally is like, you know, like Lindsay talks about how like it's a Gnostic cult, and they believe that words are magic and create reality, and that you know, and they have the spirit, they have consciousness, and they understand homeless aren't people without a home, they're without a house. See, they figured it out. You know, it's like that's literally all it comes down to. It makes them feel smarter and better. I mean, that's funny because like it's even less than recycling, but it's the exact same thing. Like recycling benefits nobody. All it does is give the person recycling a little tinge of feeling like they did their part, you know. And then they get in their car and take a drive that they could have walked, you know.
It's like putting up a profile, like a profile banner thing, like on your picture on Facebook.
Oh yeah.
There's always the profile filter where I stand with blah. You know, it's funny because it's even when it's like ones I agree with, like I can't help but roll my eyes at it. Like even if there's like a school shooting or something, and somebody's like, "I stand with Rossfield Elementary," I'm like, "Oh, shut up! No, you don't."
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're sad that children died? No way.
Yeah. No, that's I mean, just like when the Russian-Ukraine war started, like. Just ask your friends, can you point to Ukraine on a map? They don't know.
I now stand with Ukraine.
Yeah, it was like I mean when Trump drone strike that Iranian terrorist general in Iraq, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, he's gonna start World War III." Like, I only got a couple of opportunities to do it, but it was always funny. It's like when somebody was saying this, I'd be like, "Just name 5 facts about Iran right now, just off the top of your head." Name 5 things about Iran. They don't know 5 things about Iran. You know, like that's really where we're at. It's like I've got a friend who works for the state Department of Agriculture. He's the bee guy. He's like the deputy bee guy, and he talks about all the time. People are calling him, going like, I want to help the bees. I heard that the bees are in trouble, and I want to help the bees. I want to keep bees to help the bees. Like, how do I keep bees? And he's like, I can, I'll tell you how to keep bees, but that's not really helping. If you want to help the bees, plant native pollinating plants in your yard.
Oh, you don't understand though.
The native pollen population, but that's not fun. It's work.
You don't understand.
You can't eat the plants. There's, and you can't show off. You can't go to other people.
Yeah, that's the thing. You don't understand. I want to help the bees, but in a way that lets everybody else know that I'm helping the bees. So that they can, because if I just plant flowers, nobody's going to be like, "Oh, why did you plant those flowers? Was that to save the world?" Yeah. Like, no, it's if you get a beehive, if you keep bees, all of a sudden you have something of note, and they're going to ask you about it. I'm like, well, I'm just doing my part.
I'm saving the bees. One of my favorite stories he told was that some lady that was a beekeeper in the city called him up and said, "My bees are sick and the honey is weird." Because like that's mostly like what he does is he goes and inspects sick beehives and tries to diagnose them. And like it's like it's some old hippie lady in town, and he's like, first he goes to the hive and like he's described like the bees are barely active. There's only a few buzzing around. The bees are obviously very sick. And then he's like, show me the honey. And the honey is like this sickly deep brown color. And it's, just like the viscosity is all wrong. And he's going through all the things like, okay, so like, what do you feed them? And like, are you using, mite powder?
Those are wasps, dipshit.
And then like, because at one point she's like, well, yeah, I feed them the sugar solution with the green tea. And he goes, what? She's like, yeah, I feed them green tea for the antioxidants.
That's straight out of Idiocracy, man.
They got electrolytes.
They got electrolytes.
Exactly. No, that's poison for bees. You poisoned your bees.
No,
That's why they're
antioxidants.
sick.
My dog likes chocolate.
Antioxidants is what bees crave. I hear. Did you ever hear that? Did you see
You
that?
still haven't seen Idiocracy, Flip. You don't even know about that.
No, I saw it when it came out a gajillion years ago. I remember that electrolyte. It's what plants crave. But what are they? They're what plants crave.
You got to give them water from the toilet. Did you ever see that talk show that they had a lady who swore up and down that her dog was vegan because she was vegan, and they're like, all right, well, let's see what it eats. We'll put out some meat. We'll put out some vegan shit. And it obviously like immediately went to the meat. And she's somehow, I know, she's somehow shocked. Oh my goodness, I swore my dog liked this quiche that I made. I didn't.
I remember 15 years ago, I think it was Australia or something, but there was a story about hippy dippy couple killed their baby by feeding it nothing but like granola and strange yogurt. I don't know. It was like vegan baby shit, and obviously killed their infant because babies need nutrients. Which reminds me of, I got in an argument with some dingbat on Thoughtful Saints about the whole Dan McClellan men can breastfeed thing. And like, because I mean, we always joke about like how stupid can civilization get, but here's like a modern, intelligent, college educated American woman, and she's arguing with me about no, men can breastfeed an infant baby.
They went they went a different direction than I thought they would, because I thought they were going to take it in a direction of like, because trans men are heckin' valid and they can. But no, they're just like, sometimes men have defects that make them lactate. Okay,
they're talking about,
that's a far cry
in
from
that scientific paper. In that scientific paper, it basically said, well, but we should say this just so we don't hurt their feelings. It says it in the scientific paper that I shared for you guys.
But also, like, because like in the cases of male lactation, that's nothing that a baby can live on at all in any way, shape, or form. No. It's not enough. It doesn't have the nutrients. It's it's not the right composition. It's an anomaly.
Oh, but you forget that Dan McClellan includes men as men too.
Yeah, but he didn't even bring it up. That's the thing. All that thing is saying is that sometimes men leak things from their tits. Yeah. That's all that means. And what they meant by that is men can breastfeed. Like, so now some dumb jackass is going to be like, I'm leaking stuff from my tits here, baby.
Nothing like, because if these ideas actually take hold and are taken seriously, babies will die.
They're going to cause harm.
Like babies will die if men try to breastfeed them.
Or when they turn into teenagers, barf for the rest of their life. And they find out what their dumb dad did.
What the fuck, Dad?
Oh, man.
So he jumped onto that thing of, I guess, there's this guy named Trevor Lee. I think he's Utah State Senate or something. And Dan trolls his Twitter all day long, all day, every day, because he's like,
is he the guy in Dan's seat? Is he the guy that Dan would like to replace?
Probably he goes after him so hard, and he keeps saying the people need better representation than you. But that guy retweeted the only white supremacists, or not only white gyms or places where white supremacists are getting picked up. That thing that made all the rounds this week because MSNBC tweeted out. And Dan, of course, went to simping for it and saying, you didn't read the article. It just says that that's a place where they tend to go to because they know that they can have better success. And then the guy gives him a direct quote from the thing. It says, it's directly related to people being into fitness or directly related to ethno-state thinkers or something like that. And Dan goes, well, yeah, and then that's obviously true. So it's like, it's just like, until but good.
Is he becoming stupid?
It's the Kettle argument. He's doing the Kettle argument.
Well,
it's all the things all the time. It's whatever I need it to be in a second.
Kettle logic, yeah.
Kettle logic, yeah.
Go over that one again. That's the Kettle logic. It's always good to bring up some things we brought up in the past. Even comes from Derrida. Kettle logic, but kettle logic is just the concept like your neighbor brings back your kettle and it's broken, and then they start giving you answers for why it's broken. Say no, it's not. Say yes, it is. And he says, yeah, but somebody else did it. And he said, well, but no, but that's not. Yeah, but this, they just keep giving you like another thing that
it was broken when I got it. It's not
broken when I got it.
It's fine. It was broken when I. You
Yeah,
never lent it to me in the first place.
Yeah, it's several answers that all contradict each other.
So they admit to the things, and that's they contradict each other and go admitting the things. So Kevin, 6 kids, I breastfed 0. You bigot.
Your titties don't leak, Kevin.
I know.
Jared, spiritually houseless. Flip will sit down and won't shut up. That's from the debate.
I was actually going to do that one.
Not a debate. Not a debate.
Flip beat me to it, so
I don't like.
I don't do debate.
Sit down and shut up.
All right. Does anyone understand mine? What's it say?
I don't understand it. I know what what's IAQ?
You feel
40? You ass. But
140,
it's 145 or 146.
Oh.
You ass.
146 IQ.
What is? I don't know what IQ is.
IQ.
IQ. Oh, IQ. No, see, I was confused because "ku" is Portuguese for ass. It's
not
extremely
anything
rude.
in Spanish. It's just
ass?
IQ.
Is it ass?
Cool. Yeah. No. Like.
Oh.
Yeah.
I always
cool is that means ass. It means
Culo.
butthole.
Culo in
Literally.
Spanish.
Yeah. Culo.
I always just
It's
told
a
everybody
disappearing
I always told everybody it was the C word. That's
like
just assumed.
I don't like if you notice the disappearing L's of Portuguese, like a whole bunch of Spanish words with L's, the L's disappear in Portuguese, so culo becomes cool.
That's just riffing on Bill Real,
yeah.
who once again bragged about that in his 9-hour long.
Oh man, I got in another fight on
sobbing.
Saints.
He's sobbing while he's bearing testimony of his IQ.
There's a guy that he made he posted a video about like atheism is untenable because I'm going to completely hash abiogenesis, and that was like his video. And he starts out his video by saying like, I've read about this for 20 years and I'm in Mensa, and I'm just like, oh god, like I may not
credentials.
I don't know if I'm a real smart guy, but I'm smart enough not to brag about being in Mensa, like
or spending the money and time to try to get into Mensa.
Yeah.
Let's see.
There's this guy at work that's constantly trying to prove that he's smart, and it's really funny because like the way that he does it, and you've met people that do this, is he'll like learn a thing, and then the next moment he'll act like everybody's stupid for not having known that thing, or he'll he won't even tell you, hey, I learned this thing, let's talk about it. He'll subtly try to like work it into a conversation. Like he comes out of the radiological area and he's got his little dosimeter on and he's like, oh, only 0.1 milliram. Huh, that's not a very high dose. I was hoping for some hormesis. Huh? Some hormesis? Which
what's hormesis, Larry?
No, I didn't bite. I'm like, nobody's gonna bite, man. And all it is I mean, in radiological terms, it's just the idea that you might, if you're exposed to low levels of radiation, you might develop an immunity to it. It's probably total bullshit, by the way, because I don't think atoms can develop immunity.
Yeah, no, you don't get a tolerance to radiation exposure.
No, you don't. Because it's not affecting your cells directly. It's affecting the atoms of your cells, and atoms aren't biological; they're physical. They don't. Yeah. Anyway, I'm getting off topic, but it's just funny. That's what I think of when I think of Bill Reel, is this dude that's constantly bringing up, I know this thing. I'm smart. I swear to God, validate me.
He did the thing too. He's like saying, like, I started working as a busser in high school and I was the best busser. Nobody ever saw a busser good as me. And then I went to another place because I was such a good busser that they wanted the best busser.
I was solving differential equations in my spare time.
Being the best
I was
busser.
the best busser.
But I mean,
very good. But
that's just kind of ripping on. I'm going to be honest, like that
it's
episode. What were you saying?
Oh, nothing. I was just saying it's interesting how many people hate Trump, but like exude Trump like things.
Oh,
you know what
Speaking
I mean?
of Jim Bennett, who I called Trumpy forever ago online, and he's like, "Well, how am I Trumpy?" You know, all I did was go into the Jordan Peterson Facebook page and called Jordan Peterson a weenie right after telling the whole world I was going to try to improve my online behavior. And then he comes into that thing and just says, well, I was in there and I just said he was a weenie and the people didn't like it.
Yeah.
and again, like, because this my very first interaction with Jim Bennett on any level was he made that post, and I just commented, I had just learned about who you are, and I think you're kind of a weenie. And he immediately blocked me. Just like, okay, buddy, that like there we go. That's your level of respect and dialogue there,
Mr. Mom.
I mean, I don't know. We don't want to go into too much because we want Jacob to be
I
here
mean,
for
because
it,
I don't know how much of all that we'll be able to say once Jacob gets here. Because I mean, I guess we'll kind of review some of it.
I just want to tell everybody though that I saw him out. The picture of his political picture,
the meme that I have today. Did that even make sense? What I did on it is I put him behind a burning bush, and he was in the bushes there.
But I actually saw him putting that sign up. That's when I messaged you guys, and I was driving by, and I was really tempted to yell out, "Show him your mother's balls,"
because he said that.
He said that in when he was going at it with Chris while he was during general conference up on the stand with the Tabernacle Choir, and that's what he actually said during conference.
During the
when he burst into tears.
Yeah. So
that goofball, he's such a goofy goof.
The most charitable thing I can say about Jim Bennett is that I think give him a couple years and maybe he'll be ready for the internet, like this dude he's like terminally online. He's replying to like all of those YouTube comments.
He replies to everyone.
That just barely happened to me. I just, before coming in, I wanted to refresh on that video. I actually didn't finish it first time, but I listened to it all the way through, and I made the comment. I just went in and made the comment that Jim embraces something to the effect of Jim embraces the Hegelian dialectic,
Socratic,
but he rejects the Socratic dialectic. And he basically had no idea what he came in and responded within like 5-10 minutes of me actually putting that up. And
so I think he's causing himself to go more insane than he actually is.
I don't think. I mean, I tried to kind of explain the whole concept of him. He's complaining about Jacob moving the goalposts, but yet that's exactly what he's doing on the large scale.
Yeah, Jacob's holding the old line, and he's the one.
Exactly.
Well, I think he realized he was about to go do a debate, and he's like, "Oh shit! I hear people talk about these fallacies and stuff. I know I need to go learn like debate words." And so goalpost was the only one he'd learned.
Well,
and so he just kept saying that
he doesn't like to debate, because I mean there he was like waiting for me 5-6 days after this video drops, and I put a post up, and he responds within 5 minutes. I mean, It's just like this guy. Don't get him wrong. He likes to debate. There's no doubt about it. He just doesn't want to get proven wrong.
That's what I get from Jim. Like, if there's one word that describes Jim's interactions with other people, it's hypocritical.
Yeah,
it's really that. Like, we're snarky, and we're open about snarky.
Well,
and if you ask us to turn off the snarky and be serious, we're capable of it.
He's very, very upset that Jacob said his ideas cause harm and cause people to leave the church. That's all his message is online. Is other people are causing harm and causing people to leave the church.
How would he
but if somebody says it to him,
this is being on our hell.
But also that whole thing where he's like, I don't want to debate. I am going to pontificate. I'm going to talk over you. I'm going to tell you you're wrong.
Sit down and shut up.
I'm going to tell you to sit down and shut up. But I don't want to debate.
I don't want to debate.
That's beneath me. Like, what a fucker.
He's emotional, and his mouth moves faster than his brain does.
Yeah.
And when his mouth cannot catch up to his brain, he gets frustrated and goes, and that's when he says, I hate debates.
Yeah.
Because that's his I don't have anything else to say.
He's basically an authoritarian. Like, that's the other thing. He's an authoritarian.
Well, yeah. He wants to censor people, or at least like shut him up.
He's everything that used to irritate me about the church. Like, if there was anything social in the church that I didn't like, it was that. It's the church lady thing while you're a hypocrite. Like, it's fine if you're the church lady if you're keeping up, like you're actually doing it. But you're a hypocrite. Every single thing you do, like your fingers all pointing back to you, just bad. You're super pious while telling everybody else that they're being too pious. And
that's where I kind of get like confused with him, just because it's like, well, what's your real motive here? And I think that you've nailed it, Chris, in the past, and there's the picture right there. It's his politics, or really the big motivation, because it's like, but I here's the thing
you can't leave the Mormonism because you got to keep the Mormonism.
Part of me, I think that he really truly does believe what he believes in, but I just don't get where he but to me, it comes secondary to his politics.
Well, it's got to.
Well, yeah, politics win. But, I mean, obviously, he's talking about the church, and let me explain my meme. You're not supposed to explain memes, but my meme was shit. I made it real fast, and I realized I kind of need to explain more. I added that stupid burning bush, like he's the burning bush of the angel, like speaking to us there or something like that. And what the point of it is that everything he talks about is that he's sure he knows where the church is going to go in 30, 40 years. Better than whoever's running the church currently right now, or the people trying to hold the line. So it's like you're here speaking for God, or actually he's maybe even 30, 40 years ahead of God. Wow, but what if you're so far ahead of the church and the God and all that stuff? Why do you need it? You're ahead of it. Leave it behind, you doink. And that's, I mean, maybe that's one of the things that, like, Jacob's a little bit brave to say it, but it's a little bit easier for the rest of us here to say it, in the sense of, if you don't like it, there's an option. Leave it. That's an option that some of us took here. We left it, and we left it alone, in the sense of they can be who they want to be in a non-aggression principle fashion. Leave it alone. You're allowed to leave. You are always allowed to leave. All of those gay people that you're saying are allowed to leave, and you think you're saving them. And my only comment on the whole Panic video was, hey, the only way we can save the Mormon church is if we completely change the Mormon church. Okay, that's almost kind of goes in line with all the global homo stuff in this world. Like Ireland needs to be saved by pumping in 10 million people from Africa. Then you'll save Ireland. And Ireland's not reproducing well enough, but wait a minute. We saved Ireland. We saved London. That's those guys have been going on about it on Lotus Heaters this week. Is that there's all these things in the world of saying the way we save the thing is by completely changing the thing so it's no longer the thing. It's all the boat of Theseus or whatever type stuff. But it's even worse. But it's even worse because it's like the pieces are all different. Like in that ship of Theseus thing, the ship's the exact same ship. It's just you replace all the parts. So is it the same ship? Well, now it's you replace all the parts, but they're different parts. Is it the same ship? And that's, I mean, I know that Forrest on here before said, well, Chris thinks that the Mormon church can't change. I don't think they can't change anything. They can obviously change a little bit, but they can't change 100% and still be called the Mormon church. Yeah. They're just a different church then. They're the Unitarian church.
I mean, 10 years ago, John Larson did a whole Mormon expression, why the church can't change on the gay issue. And I think he lays it out pretty well. But basically like this, just you're undoing too much. That's one thing for the church to change and adapt a little bit, but none of the Mormon afterlife makes sense if gay marriage, it's just, it all falls apart. But that's the other thing though. It's like, it seems to be very much, because like, just for me, it's like, if you have faith, like you really believe and you have the witness of the Spirit, and you're gay, well, then it's clear you have to take up your cross and you have to live the laws. But if you're like, hey, I think the church is wrong,
you're the one saying you believe it.
Yeah, exactly. But like, if you're gay and you're like, I don't think the church is right about this gay stuff. Well, it sounds like you don't believe the church, so go.
Mm-hmm. Like, it's okay, simple. Flip.
The community of Christ is there for you.
Flip. You got told it was okay, Flip, by somebody. Somebody said it's okay. Flip had a whole thing on Jacob's Thoughtful Saints thing where he asked, like, is it okay to leave the church? And everybody acted almost
what really does okay mean?
What does okay mean? What do you mean by okay? I don't understand the word okay.
That's what's happened. That's what's happened to our discourse, though. Everything's become relative, and you got to freaking define all these terms, even the word okay.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is like, and admittedly, it's a very open-ended question. That was on purpose. And, and it's fine. Like, I understand people asking for clarification. And a few people did like, well, what do you mean by okay? And I'm like, just okay. Just the general meaning. Whatever you want to, however you want to use it is fine. And a lot of those people went, oh, all right. And then they answered the question. but there's just a handful of people, and it wasn't like, I had no ulterior motive. Mostly it's because I want to ask the inverse of that question to John DeLynn and Sam and Tanner and Nuance and all those people. Just ask them in verse, is it okay to be Mormon?
Yeah,
is it okay to join the church? Is that okay with you? But they won't listen to me, and I've been banned from all their spaces. But I'm just curious, with all the conversation that goes on in there. But I think, I didn't mean to, but I think I discovered a way how to filter out sophists from honest people. Because all the sophists were I have no frame of reference for what okay can mean in this context. Oh, bullshit.
But I think it was a super interesting conversation, because I think Jacob also kind of gives up the concept that not only is it two sides, that Jim Bennett's so afraid that if we don't change this, we're going to lose this half. But there is the truth of the other side of it, is that if you go change that, you're going to lose a ton of that.
You're probably going to lose more than half.
That other half's going to say, you guys.
Not the other half. It's
you're going to lose the people that are actually running the church. That's the other thing.
Because it is. I mean,
who actually pay tithing, who actually
people who pay tithing, the people who fulfill their callings. The people who are having large families.
Yeah. It is the doctrine of the family. You know what I mean? That's the fundamental thing.
And it's a different, because it's a different thing. People keep trying to equate it to the civil rights movement, and
it's not. That's apples and oranges, man.
It's a whole different concept in the sense of this is the center. Jacob is right. Jim acted all perplexed, and this is one of the things that we keep talking about. I'm going to bring up here is the hatchling. Dan McClellan and Jim Bennett act like the new hatchling, or even the people who came across the word okay. You're a new hatchling. You've never heard of this concept before. He's never come across the concept that something that's unique to the Mormon church is the temple marriage and that sort of stuff. Well, I don't know what you're talking about. What is this you're doing?
That was at that moment he got really flustered, and he wouldn't actually listen, because Jacob was trying to explain obviously the atonement is central to Mormon doctrine, but it's not unique to Mormon doctrine. That's a Christian thing, right? But what was it? Oh yeah, the temple ordinances or whatever he said was that's unique to Mormonism and central to it or whatever. And Jim was like, "You're telling me that the Mormons don't like the atonement? You lost me there." Dude, are you listening right now?
Yeah.
You can't over your own yelling and short circuiting.
Yeah. That's the thing, is I don't think he means to straw man half the time.
Hey,
it's like accidental.
He's just too emotional.
I think that's what I mean, though. It's Jim is not Machiavellian. He's not being strategic. I think he's just down to his bones, an authoritarian hypocrite with too much ego to shut up and sit down and shut up and listen for a little bit. To rip on Jacob, I think a lot of his apologetics are derived, they're unoriginal, and they're crap. I think he's hypocritical about a lot of things a lot of the time, but I think he's basically honest. I think he's basically serious with himself, and Jim is not. I don't think that Jim is basically honest. I think Jim is basically dishonest when it comes to this stuff, and I think we saw that all play out. It's pretty entertaining, though. Good for Steve Pineacker, though. That was easily the hottest thing in Mormonism this week. He got Jerry Springer out of him.
Yeah.
We'll just make a new podcast called Bishop Springer. We'll just do Mormon fights.
Mormon blood
it's Mormon blood sports. Yeah.
Mormon blood sports. Mormon blood atonement sport.
Stephen's also kind of convinced that the church is going to turn into the global homo thing too. A little.
Well, I had this discussion with my wife years ago. She was like, "Do you think the church will ever do gay marriage?" And I was like, "I don't think so. And I think it would be a bad move." She's like, "What would you do? If you were still Mormon and they allowed for gay marriage?" And I was like, "I would probably leave." And she was like, "Why? You're because I'm I've been pro gay marriage for most of my life, but I feel like that's just such an obvious contradiction I don't know how people don't see it.
I know
because-
some people directly who message me and talk to me because of this. They don't comment all the time, but who were in California at the time of Prop 8 and felt they got put up to going and making a stand for all that stuff. And then
Carton says that.
And then when it all got turned the other way and they threw them all under the bus, and that is the reason they are out right now. I mean, it's already happened just from how far it's gone that direction. And it's not even the sense of that they cared like it was the biggest deal in the world about the gay marriage thing. It's kind of that they got thrown under the bus because they were told that this is the centerpiece of that religion. So they're not angry so much at the United States at making that gay. They're angry at the religion for not holding it as principle and saying like, well, that was the central theme of your plan of salvation. So I guess that's just not true, huh? And that's when they bailed on that.
Well, I might be sitting with you guys if that's where it goes, you know.
Yeah. But I mean, we've had a couple other Kevin,
and that's the reason. I mean,
a couple other people. Guadamac said it the same to us that she'd be like, "Well, I guess this wasn't the true church." Or something like that.
Then just Kevin can do drugs with us.
Then they just changed out because they changed.
You ever heard of psychedelics?
But the never heard of psychedelics.
Only if you get them from Nuance Ho.
Listen, man, what they help you do is see the world as one, and you feel as one, and then from that point on, you're into Blue Church. The
universe is actually big. I don't know if you knew that.
I do know that because I am the universe. I'm the universe experiencing itself. But saying all that, that's a whole other subject, which Bill Reel and John DeLynn, and I gotta say, their third episode, I thought it was a pretty darn good episode for them, even though they still kind of default to their stuff. I mean, I was really impressed that they had been thinking about some of the different things we've been talking about. I
only listened to the part where John DeLynn stumbled idiotically over Scandinavian history.
That you got pretty far in. Then what do you mean you only?
No, because Jared sent a thing like, "Hey, just
you sent the clip."
Yeah, I said the
so I listened to like 10 minutes.
So he noticed what's gets called an alt-right talking point online of saying that noticing that the Scandinavian countries are mostly homogenous and white.
John DeLynn
why they do
better.
And John DeLynn just says it like right out.
Because he said something about how religious people on average are more happy than non-religious people. And Bill Reel's like, well, that's true in some cases, but if you go to Scandinavian countries, they're very non-religious and they're very happy. And he's like, yeah, but I guess some pushback could be they only have white people there. Oops.
And there's a lot less like fighting between the races and all that sort of stuff.
I want to make what's the Dilbert guy's name? I can't.
Scott Adams.
Scott Adams. I want to make a Scott Adams noticer meme with John DeLynn.
Yeah. I remember him saying stuff like, they've only ever had money and they've never been oppressed. Like, what planet do you live on, John?
I know.
That's your understanding of Northern European history.
He brought up a point that gets called an alt-right talking point too, that one of the reasons they're able to have that comfort is because they're sitting under the wing of the American military industrial complex. Like they're able to like hang out over by themselves and not worry about that stuff, which you could say that on Twitter somewhere, you'll get called alt-right.
John DeLynn been on 4chan.
John DeLynn when he talks about that, where he's like, they wouldn't have any chance in a war against a world power. And it's like, John, Finland beat the Soviets twice in World War II. Like, they were hideously outnumbered and they won. And also, Sweden is very militarily independent. They've got a whole fascinating, like their Air Force is kind of fascinating because their whole thing is about basically self-defense. And so, because Sweden is the only country that isn't a gigantic world power that produces its own top-of-the-line fighter jets, for example. And their fighter jets are designed to, so that you can change the engines without, heavy machinery and stuff. And large sections of their interstate, their highway system, are designed to operate as makeshift runways. Mm-hmm. And, in the mountains and random places, they have these little hangars built into the mountains. So, a fighter jet could take off from an air base, intercept a Russian bomber, land on a piece of highway somewhere, totally scattered about. Like the idea that
But are
Sweden-
you now suggesting that John Dehlin doesn't know 5 things about Iran
Yeah.
or Sweden?
I am suggesting that he doesn't know 5 things about just 20th century.
Oh Lord,
North
somebody's about to come on
European
here and be
history.
really mean to me, aren't they?
Uh-oh.
Son of a
I think
bitch.
I think a face thing is not working on there. We got
Yeah, we don't have
Squint Eastwood.
anything.
Squint Eastwood is muted right now. I think he's probably prepping his makeup.
Maybe Squint. Let's see if Squint Eastwood pops up here in a second. I'll watch down below. But I was trying to pull up the moment on alt-right Dehlin.
Oh yeah.
Man, if I were more
That was
artistically
funny.
inclined, I'd make a Pepe John Dehlin.
Let's see if I pulled the right moment.
super. Feels super all right,
Is
man.
that-
Again,
No, that's the wrong one.
No, it's I have the timestamp. I will look for it real quick. It's like over 2 hours in.
Ah, here it is. Let me see if Squint Eastwood's popping up. Hold on.
I
Listen
know
up.
Margie loves some of those Scandinavian countries. I think we have things to learn from those countries. The only critique or pushback I have is they're super white. They don't have multiracial, multi-ethnic societies to deal with that are much more complex and difficult. They don't have necessarily the history of slavery or of oppression. And also my own personal critique is they've benefited from the protection of other countries. So like, yeah, if let's just say the UK and the United States and others hadn't intervened to keep Hitler from sweeping through Germany or Stalin from sweeping the other way, those countries, none of them would have stood.
totally.
And they don't have the military budgets to defend themselves, but they rely on treaties.
Is he saying this because they're like physically small? Because Germany's not all that large. I don't know what else. What are the other reasons he would be saying this?
And also, I mean, again, with this whole thing about like they have no history of slavery, it's so astoundingly stupid. But for one example, the name Karl, Charles, Carlos, Kettle, all those variations of Karl, is an old Germanic word that means free man, which was so a free man was a Karl, as opposed to the not free men.
Oh, you mean the
were
oppressed?
slaves.
The Slavic.
Well, it's not even that, but like even like you don't even have to get into Slavs, but like in very like part of the population of Scandinavia was enslaved for most of history, you know, like because slavery was everywhere. This whole thing where like because I mean John believes that like slavery is a thing that happened in North America, you know, for 3 centuries until he fixed it, he saved us. But no, like everywhere had slaves. There was not the place like it wasn't like slaves got turned on one day. In fact, they got turned off one day by the evil British Empire.
Blue light glasses don't work.
Blue blockers.
I didn't know that.
Well,
My eyes have been sucking lately.
What is blue light glasses? I don't know what
You
that
put it on
is.
the- like
they're supposed to filter out blue light.
They're
It's just-
yellowish, right?
Blue
Yeah.
Why do you want to
blockers.
do that?
Well,
It's-
there's a
They're
lot of
looking
people.
at a
90s
computer
infomercials
screen.
for those.
There's a lot of people that are claiming that blue light is a lot more
Change your
terrible for your
testosterone,
eyes.
eh?
It is a little bit different for your eyes. Like that's one of the reasons we can stare into a fire so long because it
Well,
doesn't
I like-
have
'cause-
blue light coming from it.
Because I like this. I have a setting on this laptop that's night mode that gives everything kind of a jaundiced sepia tint, and it's nice. Like at night in the dark, it really does relieve eye strain. But that's the only time I even think about that kind of thing.
Yeah, the very little bit of research I've done into it makes it sound like blue light isn't actually all that bad for you. It's
Yeah,
just-
no, it's like it seems like
the light that's good for you is actually like getting up in the morning and when the sun is rising, like it really helps your your circadian rhythm or whatever to get some of that sunlight direct like into your not staring at the sun, but get some of that sunlight into your eyes. And it's because of the angle more than anything. I don't know.
For 3 years I had a job that started at 7 a.m. no matter what. So I got up at 5:30 every morning. And I really like that. Like when I
did
had
too.
to get up every day at 5:30. But like because you know now I have a job where like some 2 days a week I have to go in 2 hours earlier than normal. And it's like those days I just sleep less. That's all there is to it. Like yeah.
Mhm.
But when I was getting up at 5:30 every morning, Like even on weekdays, I would get up 6:30 at the latest. You know, I didn't like this thing now where like on my days off, I will sleep in an extra 4 or 5 hours.
Oh yeah, it's kind of a nice thing to get used to because I gotta work at I gotta be to work by 7, but it's an hour drive to get there, and I've been actually going to the gym now, which I've never
Whoa.
done before, but I do that
All
before
right.
work.
All
Yeah.
right. White
And
he's a bro now.
supremacy.
I know I'm gonna be a gym bro, and so I have to wake up at like 3:30 in the morning to
Is
do
it
that. But it's
Well, now blue
is it Ruby
blockers
Rich
can.
Gym?
it's yeah, it's Planet Fitness, which is pretty inclusive and accepting. So
No
maybe
lunks
no
there.
alt-rights
Don't
there.
grunt. Don't
Yeah,
grunt.
White
no
Planet.
grunting.
Although I'm an
Why do
anti-grunter
people?
myself.
Why do
anyway,
people?
though.
Why do people work out with sweatshirts on? Are they trying to sweat? Is that what it is?
I do that when it's wintertime and stuff.
It's not wintertime. It's summer, and like
Oh,
people
that's
like
true.
they have their hood up.
Some people
And
are
it's indoors.
some people are doing the what they wrestlers are doing. They're trying to cut water weight sometimes, but those people usually aren't at Planet Fitness. Usually, what it is if you're wearing a hoodie, you're hiding your chubs. That's what it is. Anyway, back to the Bill Reel and Delin thing.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff that they said on there that was kind of interesting, like Delin stopped and wondered if they're making stuff worse, not better. They're talking about the concept that we bring up all the time of maybe all the navel gazing is what causes the depression, and people who tend to work or societies that are the lower level societies. They bring up the Harari stuff, and this is one of my major issues with the Harari stuff. Isn't that it's wrong in the sense of Harari's always got that sort of deal of, that money is a myth. It's a myth that we just assign value to those dollars, and you're supposed to like blow your head away. And
Wow, you mean God doesn't endow this piece of cloth with inherent value? Whose mind is blown by that?
We arbitrarily chose gold and just decided it was worth something. And it's not. That's not how it works.
Now I'm buying bricks currency.
And you're just gonna go announce them to people that don't work.
Yeah.
It works, man. That stuff drives me crazy. Like I said forever ago on one of my mushroom trips that I might or might not have had, in the middle of it, I decided that I was watching some golf tournament with Tiger Woods, and I decided if I was there, I could walk up to all of them and say, "Hey, stupids, this game doesn't mean anything." Yeah. And then when I got to the other side of the shroom trip, I was like, what a stupid dipshit I am. Like, that is just so stupid. That is like dumb little hippie dipshit stuff. Like, because that game, of course, it means everything in the world to the people who are playing it. And there's all sorts of money in it that makes it mean something, but the gold itself too. I mean, I listened to this long thing. I couldn't regurgitate it, but there's a reason gold was chosen as the currency, man. It's specifically has like it's specifically rare. It's specifically moldable, and then can be like cleansed and purified and all sorts of.
It doesn't tarnish.
It doesn't tarnish.
Don't forget the missionary line.
What's that?
That the gold plates didn't tarnish.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Let's see. Clint East was telling us something here.
Well, I shared the StreamYard link on accident instead of the link to the. I shared it to Thoughtful Saints. Let me check.
I was gonna say, did you share
That's
the
in
link
Thoughtful
or-
Saints, so anybody could pop in.
Yeah, I did
Yeah.
Thoughtful Saints and Latter-day Lobsters, and I accidentally shared the StreamYard link instead.
Oh,
Oh,
that's sweet. Somebody popped.
I
in.
thought that was planned.
If it's up there, I mean, I guess anybody would pop in. Although I don't know how many of these things will let open up, but I mean, we should start opening up to have some people pop on and bullshit with us if you want to bullshit with us. Anybody there, you can come on. But I don't know how many spaces this thing allows. Probably 1 million. Anyway, all that stuff about the Harari stuff where they just talk about everything's myth. We just have our myths and that sort of deal. And kind of the concept of it is just. And actually, Margie brought that up. Margie has actually said some things I was totally in agreement with. Is like, it's not just, but there's a reason behind them. There's a reason the ones worked, and the ones that didn't work. That's why we usually point to the evolutionary answer. Flips
my white screen. I guess
white
it has
screen went
ads.
weird. Is that another 24
Well, no,
hours?
it cut to an ad.
But one of the things so they bring up that Fowler's levels of faith type stuff. You guys followed that? Ever seen that Fowler's?
Yeah.
I remember John Larson talking about it 15 years ago.
So it kind of goes in line with what Karl Popper called historicism, which is the concept of long arc of history. Stuff's just going to go get better to the thing that, and Harariism kind of says that too. It assumes that the cycle it assumes it's not cycles. It assumes that stuff's just straight upness. And that's the only major issue that I had with a lot of the stuff they were saying today, is that everything's just going to keep going this way. Even if there's like some things that fall out in the meantime of that, the long arc of history, Hegel said it'll use people and discard them on its way up. And that Harari stuff just talks like that. And part of like why Jimsley would point at saying that it's Marcuse's world with them is part of what Marcuse felt or believed with it is that the human will go changing. This is actually true all the way back to Fourier or Charles Fourier, one of the very first socialists that even Marx was criticizing, that they thought that these ways of the world will change the human. The human will fundamentally change into a different species or a different being or something like that. And Harari totally buys in that stuff. And I feel like Bill buys in that stuff. And they're all just saying it's just up. But the other people that I point who also kind of look at their societies do go from pre-modern to modern to postmodern, or they go from a mystified world to a demystified world, is that they fall apart and break and reform. It's a cycle. It's a pride cycle. It's a cycle. It's not it's not an up. And it could totally go back to Stone Age we got the Oppenheimer movie coming out. Stuff could go back to Stone Age in the flip of fingers or something like that. It's not a long arc of history. And which is, they keep bringing up Buddhism. I was talking to Christopher before the crow's nest on this, and Buddhism's about cycles and not about long arc of history either, too. It's not. They westernize the Buddhism, like I said before. They make it all fluffy and lovey-dovey, or as Paul Vanderklay calls it, your happy nihilism. Like you write in this these stories into it. Anyway, Mary Harrington was on with Jonathan Pajau today. I kind of want to talk about this if we go into it, because I wanted to talk about Sound of Freedom, the Sound of Freedom. So he just did John DeLynn just did an episode on the Sound of Freedom a couple hours ago. Jared, I know you watched it. Did either of you guys flip your channel?
I never saw it.
I watched it.
I haven't seen it.
So
Is it good?
No.
Yeah, it's really good.
I don't mean the movie.
Oh, the movie. We're talking about John
DeLynn
DeLynn's episode.
Oh,
I haven't seen the movie.
I haven't seen any of the things.
I don't think I'll go to a movie theater again in my life. But
you should, just to spite Disney.
Yeah,
that is tempting.
That is honestly the biggest pull, is just to be part of flipping the bird to Disney, but that's still not a big enough pull for me.
So DeLynn had
Come on, dude. They screwed over all the franchises that you loved.
Yeah. But then, because, that's things, though. They're like,
$10.
I kind of felt like they taught me an important lesson about impermanence and growing up, and that anything.
It's part of the cycle.
Destroyed.
It's part of the cycle. Yeah, the death of Disney. The death of
Disney. That's things like I remember
thinking.
Model.
I'm a fall for the accelerationism.
I was born in 1980, and my very earliest movie memory was the speeder bike scene in the theater. I was like 2.5 years old, but I remember the freaking trees and the speeder bikes. And so I absolutely grew up with those movies, And so 10-year-old me, if a genie was like, you have one wish, and I would have said, I want more Star Wars. And he's like, all right, just wait another 9 years.
You mean a monkey paw?
And it was exactly. It was a total monkey paw wish where I'm like, no, I didn't want more Star Wars. I would have been so much happier. I would still love Star Wars if no more Star Wars came out after 1983.
I know there's been more Star Wars that I
now,
hate.
like,
than
if
I
somebody
love.
says, "Do you like Star Wars?" I have to say, like, depends. Like, you know, I like the old stuff.
It's nowadays how movies is any sort of thing getting rebooted is like no.
I know.
That's
That's
not.
I have to imagine it'd be terrible to be an original Star Wars fan, like somebody who was like an adult for the original trilogy, because I have to imagine that you actually get excited for the prequel trilogy, and you're like, oh, awesome, and then after it comes out, you're like, these aren't very great. I don't like these very much. This sucks. They shouldn't have done this.
Do you want
and then
to?
all of a sudden you get them like 20 years later. Disney's like, well, okay, at least Disney's got a hold of it. They've done a good job with this Marvel stuff so far. They'll do pretty well. They'll do better than the prequels. And like, oh God.
Yeah.
At what point, which trilogy are people gonna like snap into it and be like, please just let it die?
Mary Harrington and Jonathan Pajot just talked today because I mean a little bit of what they're talking about here is conspiracies and the return of myths. And it was a good episode to kind of go along with talking about this stuff. But somewhere in there they talked about Disney's gonna release a Snow White. And they're saying, like, what can they even do? And Mary says, like, they're almost obligated to murder it. You know, they can't not destroy it now. And but part of what they're talking about here is you know, kind of that thing that I always say about Alex Jones is that a lot of different conspiracy theories aren't technically true, but they're directionally true, type stuff. But that's what I'd say about the DeLynn episode, because DeLynn.
I thought it was interesting him justifying the lizard people conspiracy.
Oh yeah, well, I'll pull up that. We'll listen to it.
Pretty interesting.
But first, I wanted to like kind of because one of the things that the Lynn episode talked about, because they brought on Vice magazine journalists, super trustworthy Vice magazine. Not to say that they weren't, because what matters is the truth or not, but freaking Vice. They came in and the Vice people didn't want to say anything too definitive, obviously, because they were afraid they could be sued. So they just kind of asked a lot of questions like, is all this stuff true? Is it completely 100% true? Does he profit off of it? Does he make money off of it? Does he, you know, they asked all these questions, but then they were afraid to say anything definitive. And then he brought on Lynn Packer afterwards, who was definitely going after the movie, saying it didn't technically happen like that. It happened like this. It didn't happen like that. It happened like this, because he knew like some of the backstories and stuff. And one of the things I wanted to maybe point out with it is he could maybe say, because obviously this is like spiked the imagination of the whole stinking country, right? I mean, I hung out with one of my friends who was kind of lefty this weekend. He was asking why is this hitting so hard right now? And Disney had the rights to the movie, and they sold it and got rid of it, and they released it in Indiana Jones, and this beat Indiana Jones this last week. And so you kind of go, well, why doesn't Disney want this movie? And why is it
not only beat Indiana Jones, it cost like an 18th of what they spent on Indiana Jones.
It was like 160 million for Indiana Jones or something like that.
I thought it was more like 400 million. I don't know though.
I don't know. I can't remember, but maybe it was like 16 million or something that it cost to make The Sound of Freedom. Which is pretty wild, because it's actually, the production value is pretty awesome. Like it's just like, wow, they did that with that budget. That's crazy. Yeah,
I heard it seems pretty darn well made. Like it's better than like the typical like Christian made movie.
Oh yeah, no, it's like
it's got a 76% on Rotten.
No, it's
insane.
It's better than
it's Hollywood production value.
It's better than Left Behind.
Oh yeah, it's got. I mean, for Rotten Tomatoes to give it a 76%, that probably means it's close to 90% as far as production value goes, because they had the political will to tear it down.
I don't know. I'm a pretty staunch fan of the Left Behind trilogy.
I only saw the third one.
Oh, I saw all three of them and the Nick Cage remake in one day.
I just remember Nicolas Cage's performance being the most phoned in acting job I've ever seen in my life.
Nicolas Cage, he either gives it everything or nothing.
Yeah, no, he's so funny. It's like it's hard to think of an actor that has played has done a worse job in worse movies and has done such a great job in great movies as Nicolas Cage.
Well, supposedly that
You
new
know?
Nosferatu movie is got rave reviews. I want to watch it whenever.
Yeah, I
it's
kind of want to see,
available.
because like as compared to like William Shatner. William Shatner is 100% William Shatner in everything he appears in all the time. You know, which is neither great nor terrible. It's just Shatner, but he was
consistent. Fantastic in American Psycho too.
Did you watch that? Didn't I put you onto that one, didn't I?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't know it
I remember.
existed, and you told me about
I was
it.
gonna jump on that bandwagon,
You did, yeah.
but I didn't.
You told me about
It's
it,
so dumb.
and me and I had never seen the first one, so me and my wife watched both of them back to back.
Boy, that's like going from the sauna into the ice bath. That's a change. It's just funny because like
I'm gonna put Conan,
obviously they
Conan the
tacked on the
Barbarian in
sequel,
that
but-
level. Part 1 is great, 2 sucks, and then RoboCop Part 1 is great, Part 2.
Well, the other thing, I mean, with American Psycho is that like
Predator.
American
Crow,
Psycho
the
2
Crow.
was an
No,
entirely
Part 2 of the Predator's good. 3 and on suck.
Was 2 good?
2's good. Yeah.
That's
but
the one with Danny
it was an
Glover.
entirely unrelated property that they
Sorry,
tacked
Flipper.
on American Psycho. Sorry, that's all I had to say.
No, say
throw
what
that
were you
into
saying,
one.
James?
Oh.
Who's talking now?
I think we cut you off. What were you saying?
No, just American Psycho 2 originally, like, they made it and it had nothing, like, it was a completely separate property. And just as a studio money grab, they're like, oh, let's make this American Psycho 2. And they tacked on a scene at the beginning where she kills the guy from the first movie just to tie it together.
Spoiler alert.
That's literally the only tie-in.
She as a like a 12-year-old kills Patrick Bateman.
What? Really?
Yes, that's the very
It's
beginning
not
of the movie.
Patrick Bateman. It's like a different actor, but it's supposed to be him.
It's not Christian Bale. You don't see his face.
Was it written
Yeah.
by what's his
Yeah.
name who wrote the first
Oh,
one?
no,
Thanks, guys. I
No,
haven't
no.
seen any of these.
No, like I said, it was a completely separate movie. Like, it was just a dumb college movie about it's just a dumb movie. Just that. It's like a girl wants to be an FBI profiler because she's obsessed with serial killers, and in order to get her to achieve her goals, she murders everyone that's in her way. So like, there's a rival student for the best student, so she murders him, and then there's a student that suspects him, so she murders him, and it just goes on and on like that.
You gotta watch the intro.
Blair Witch 1 to Blair Witch 2. Blair Witch 2 was holy crap, that sucked.
I saw those each once, and it was kind of like, okay.
I thought Part 1 was real creative the first time that
Yeah,
came
well, it's like, I don't know. It's
First
one of those things
time.
where it's like I saw it too late. Like if you were one of the early people, like you say, like if you just saw it without any context.
But you
But,
also
like, I
had the
already seen
Seinfeld
10
effect
million interviews with
because like that
filmmakers and all that.
bringing about like the shaky cam and like acting like it was found footage and stuff. You had what's called the Seinfeld effect, which nowadays, like, I guess if kids see like a Seinfeld show, they don't get that it's revolutionary for people to be sitting around doing a show about nothing, talking about bullshit and all that sorts of stuff. They didn't realize that Seinfeld started that, and it just seems to be situated in the middle of all these other ones that are the same thing, and they don't know which one was the originator.
Yeah.
The reason I talked about this and myth and all that stuff is that they kind of pulled up because that story is kind of based off of true events supposedly, but even the what's it called, the Underground Railroad,
Operation Underground Railroad,
and I guess it just came out today that he left Operation Underground Railroad. They had a separation just today.
Really?
Huh.
Yeah. And who knows why? We don't really know why yet, if one left the other or something like that. But they were pretty open that it's like, it's 80% true, and it's kind of blending some stories together. It wasn't exactly like this. But it's directionally 100% true is the idea. And they kind of talk about that in the symbolic world. But of course, with Hollywood movies, that's how stuff is done. Like if you watch the HBO series on the Chernobyl explosion, they grouped a bunch of stories together and condensed them down into one person, when that was actually like a bunch of different doctors who noticed the fallout from the uranium or whatever, and that was a bunch of different, and they condensed it down into one person to make it a story or something like that. Because they have a bunch of people working on it, they condensed a bunch of different stories together, and then some of the stuff's. But the guy was complaining, well, this isn't exactly true, and it's not exactly how it happened. It's not exactly how it went down. And plus, they embellish it, and he makes himself look like a superhero and all that sort of stuff, and they're being critical of it. But
He makes himself look like a superhero just because he saved kids from sex slavery.
Yeah.
But I know.
Why can't he be humble about it? Well, I don't really
To
care
John
if he's
Delin's
humble
credit
about it.
too, like some of the commenters said, "Hey, you guys are being nitpicky." Sounds like here's something he'd read them and say it and bring it up to the people who are talking. But there's some of the stuff that you kind of go like, "All right, you guys are embellishing a little bit." But the reason I want to talk about all that is the directionally true thing. We'll listen to Mary and.
Hello, everyone. I am here with Mary Harrington, and I know many of you have been looking forward to this conversation. We've been kind of skirting around each other. I've been watching her from the sidelines, seeing very many interesting discussions and her wonderful articles. But it is a article called "The Fairy Tale Allure of Conspiracies," which really kind of caught me, and I thought would be an interesting starting point for a conversation with her. And so, Mary, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And so maybe you can tell us a bit about what the basic thesis of that article is, and we can start the conversation, because I think it comes close to many of the things that we talk about in the symbolic world as well.
Yeah, it's a simple thesis, which is that, I mean, it's what people say about Alex Jones, right? That he may be factually wrong, but he's often directionally right.
Yeah.
Or, to put it in slightly more highfalutin terms and without the extremely problematic commentator, what I'm saying is that when I talk about conspiracy theories or the stories that float around, which tend to get dismissed as conspiracy theories, is that they made the factual details of them can sometimes be way off and very baroque, but at a metaphorical level, at a poetic level, they're often pretty on the nose.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's definitely the point to look at. And we can actually use tools of storytelling analysis. You can use the same kind of tools you use to interpret myths or interpret fairy tales or religious stories to look at some of the tropes that appear in these conspiracy theories. The lizard people one, I like to look at the extreme ones because I think they're the best cases. The lizard people one is so simple. It's the idea that there are snake people and that those snake people are not like us, but in some ways they've ended up becoming our own leaders. And so we have, it just basically manifests a deep distrust in leadership and the idea that the people that are running us, the people that have control over us, do not want our interests. They have other interests that are strange. They have strange interests and not our own.
Right. I remember thinking much the same. There was a rumor. I mean, it's still flying around. There's a whole series of rumors that slosh around the internet about how Joe Biden is not in fact real. Some people say he's an AI, or that he's computer-generated simulation, or another variant of this, the slightly more banal variant of this, is the one that just says he's senile. I don't know. I can't attest to the truth or otherwise of any of these. But what they seem to me to be conveying is a sense that the president of the United States is not in fact the leader of the United States, and that in some sense, and the details vary, he's a sort of cardboard cutout behind which something is calling the shots, and that's the story that's actually being told, and the rest of it is just vivid coloration.
Yeah, and it's story tropes really, and it's kind of falling into ancient story tropes, which are almost they're necessary to call to the importance of the moment. You could say, when you look at the way people tell stories in movies, is a good way to understand that. In real life, the good guy and the bad guy actually don't fight. They don't duke it out. They have armies and they have all these bureaucracies between them. And then they have these massive complicated things that are really boring to look at and to think about. But if you want to get the image of it, you have the two guys, the two protagonists, even if they're the president and some other character, they actually have to physically duke it out. Or if you want to.
And he brings up the point later, but it should be obvious that like if you go make a movie about the kids, saving the kids from the predators around the world and stuff, there's going to be some of that same Hollywood embellishing to make it a story,
show a bomb in a movie, you have to have a red blinking light. Like no terrorist would ever put a red blinking light on a bomb, but you have to have that in order to signal to people what is going on. And I think that in a lot of these kind of crazy, wild, imagistic stories, you have a similar type of approach, some type of tropes that are being used in the way we remember them.
Right, and one of the examples I gave of these, which actually is a provocative example, I suppose, concerns the theory, which also sloshes around, it's kind of QAnon adjacent, I guess, that there exists a sort of baby-eating Satanist conspiracy. I mean, theories of that kind have been sloshing around for some time, but there's definitely a Q adjacent version of that story, that there exists a cabal of people who are, for esoteric, possibly devil-worshipping reasons, kidnapping and murdering babies. And I'm thinking, well, factually, this is probably not true. However, there is an organization that calls itself the Satanic Temple, and they have created a telehealth clinic in New Mexico where you can obtain abortion pills in order to circumvent the changes in legislation since Dobbs. And they have also launched a court case under religious freedom legislation in the United States to protect the right to what they call an abortion ritual in order to release complicated feelings around terminating pregnancy. And I'm thinking it's not quite the thing, but you can sort of see how you get from A to B, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's also, I think the idea of people who eat your children is a very important image, and it's a very dark image. Of course, we know how that it's been used in very dark ways in the past, but it is an image which shows the notion that something is taking your fruit, like something is taking that which is important to you. Someone is stealing it away from you, kind of pulling it away from you. And one of the like one of the important shifts that in the kind of conspiracy language or this kind of imagistic language, which is important to notice, is that in the ancient world we used to use these types of tropes for the people that we didn't know who they were, right? It's like the cannibals and the monsters and the lizard people and the dog-headed men. They're on the edge of the world, right? There are these weird things that we don't know about, these kind of strangers that we don't know about. There's an interesting shift that happened, which is that now these types of images are used against our own elites, which is not something to just kind of to just brush away. It seems like there is a shift. It means that if the normal traditional society, little tribal society anywhere in the world, tends to be suspicious of the stranger, now we're suspicious of our own power, the people that are powerful over us. That's a different thing.
Yeah, it's a significant shift. I mean, it tracks with, returning to a more banal level of interpretation, it tracks with a pervasive loss of trust in institutions. But the explanation for it, or rather the emotional, you can see where emotionally resituating the lizard guys in our own elites rather than outside on the edge of the world makes sense. If there's been a pervasive loss of trust in institutions and a loss of trust in the alignment of elites with the masses, and that's measurably the case. I mean, I interviewed Peter Turchin last week, who writes about elite overproduction and the way in which elites need to be kept in check, or at least roughly aligned with the masses, because otherwise they will have a tendency to turn power into goodies for themselves. At which point that sets off a whole cycle of elite overproduction, which usually culminates in crisis and some kind of an uprising. At which point the whole cycle starts again. And in his view, I mean, I think his phrase was, America is now in a revolutionary situation. And I think I can't speak for where you are, but Britain doesn't feel a million miles off that in the divergence between the interests of those with any access to the levers of power and those from whom they're siphoning wealth and resources and opportunities to lead a decent life. So given this, the fact that that's emanating, at the sort of mythic level as lizard people who walk amongst us, or baby eating cabals gathering on Epstein Island, or whatever variant of the story we're looking at, it doesn't feel so strange, really. What I find fascinating, just kind of zooming out for a bit, is just how radically and how quickly it's become normal again to speak in mythic terms since we transitioned from print to a digital culture. I mean, this is a kind of long-term preoccupation of mine.
Yeah. So my friend was asking, why is this?
Is that it sounds a little bit like, remember when AOC said it's more important to be morally correct than factually correct? I think you can kind of make the case that that's the same thing that they're saying here. Not exactly, but
I think, because I think some of the people who are directionally right completely believe it, but part of the deal is, it's like, so I saw this whole thread right here, Astral Flight. It talks about the Marquis de Sade. You know who the Marquis de Sade is?
he invented sadism.
Yeah, he
was literally the first.
He was the guy. Wait, isn't he the dude on Mike Tyson Mysteries?
No, he's the guy that, according to Kate Kelly, he took a boat to America and introduced rape to the native people there. That was Marquis de Sade, the European.
So he wrote a lot about this stuff. And this guy says that one of the things he was doing was trying to expose to the people what technically other people wrote in as Dracula. Like, think about Dracula. And Dracula was this high elite person, foreign person coming to your country to mesmerize your women and eat your babies and steal your stuff. And he was an aristocrat, and he was coming to suck your blood, suck the life out of you, it's all kind of the same mythical thing. And they're talking about mythology kind of matching up with the stuff, and the fears are kind of speaking down to the gut level of the person. So like he says here, like, the decadence and debauchery in this work only becomes possible in certain historical periods, namely that of empire, within an aristocracy so rich and powerful that their duties of state making and maintaining having been outsourced to private enterprises or an up and running bureaucracy, they then get to work of self-immolation, mostly through sexual debauchery and mutilation in themselves and others. Therefore, we see the emergence of cults involving cutting, castration, sexual offerings as religious rite, and of course, pedophilia. And one of the things he talks about again is, like, it's all kind of like a something you can blame affluence for a little bit. But that's a whole rabbit hole going on of talking about myth, because Bill Reel and John DeLynn were on about myth, and well, we can see the reason for myth, but we can just think our way out of it now. We just think our way out of it. And one of the things that I was kind of like pulling up, like, even Adorno said, let me tell you this. Adorno and Horkheimer do not use the term enlightenment primarily to designate a historical period ranging from Descartes to Kant. Instead, they use it to refer to a series of related intellectual and practical operations, which are presented as demythologizing and secularizing and disenchanting some mythical, religious, and magical representation of the world. And at the core of Adorno and Horkheimer's understanding of enlightenment are two related theses. Myth is already enlightenment, and enlightenment reverts to mythology. And that's kind of one of the things that Mary's getting on about right there. But we can get off of the subject of mythology because they were talking about it in the Harari way, which the Harari way is, hey, we decided something's myth and we can just think our way out of it. Even money. Hey, money's just a myth. Let's just think real hard and we can think our way out of this money thing. And but then part of the whole point that they're pointing at is that the myth just reasserts itself. And but then, you know, I was just pointing to the stuff of myth and Dracula and the myth of you know, the Sound of Freedom and babies and kids and all that sorts of stuff, the lizard people. We're getting around the whole entire point, but we've got our guest.
Whoa.
Hey guys,
What's
sorry
up?
I'm a little sweaty and gross. I literally just walked out of jujitsu. So
Oh, nice.
10 minutes ago I was
beat
rolling
up
with
That
Boy
sounds
Scouts?
very.
220.
That sounds alt-right of you.
Yeah, that's what white supremacists do.
Did your
Exactly.
opponent make you sit down and shut up?
Pretty much did. The guy I was actually rolling with, he's I think he probably weighed about 230 to 250, and he was a former wrestler. So
Oh, goodness.
I spent a lot of time getting crushed.
How long you been doing jiu-jitsu?
What was that?
How long you been doing jiu-jitsu?
Well, I do it really seasonally and on and off. So when I tell you how long I've been doing, someone might think that I'm better than I am, but I've been doing about 5 years now, on and off. But it's pretty part-time. Kind of when I get time, I go and roll. So I've done one. I did one tournament so far, and I took second, so I was happy about that.
Nice.
But that was it was a white belt tournament, so it was kind of the lowest level. So I can't get too cocky about that.
Your brother says
White is
exclusive.
the lowest level? That doesn't sound alt right.
Yeah. They got to get their messaging better.
The martial artists had it right all along.
So we've already been reviewing and talking about what we remember from your guys' little debate this week, and we've already said some stuff.
That wasn't supposed to be a debate, by the way. It actually.
Well, no, Jim doesn't do debates.
Well, here's my thing. I genuinely like. If I want to have a debate, like I want to have an actual debate. Like I want there to be rounds. I want there to be equal time, a cross-examination section, and then you can. It's like the difference between a street fight and a boxing match. Okay, that's anytime you're unstructured and you're conflicting over ideas. Like social media is literally just a giant street brawl, and Twitter is a bunch of gangs who hang out together, occasionally run into each other, and then you get 35 people stabbing someone for having the wrong opinions, like some ghetto street fight. And so
sometimes they snap in unison and
I don't like
break
to
into
debate
song.
unless it's an actual debate.
Yeah.
What was it?
Well-
So what was it supposed to be then? Like, if it wasn't supposed to be a debate, what was it? Like you guys are
Jim was
talking-
going to show us how to have how
Yeah,
respectful dialogue happens.
Yeah, you got two guys that are talking about a thing they disagree on. I don't know what else it was supposed to be.
Well, here's what I believe a conversation is. A conversation is, even if the two people disagree, if you're engaging in a good faith conversation, what you do is you both sit down and you say, okay, look, we both disagree. We're probably not going to convince each other. But what if we did this? What if we just sat down with each other and figured out what we do agree on and try and understand kind of from there where we diverge and then why we diverge? Rather than trying to resolve anything, the goal is to understand and to clarify our difference rather than to resolve the difference. And I've done that before with people, and it's actually quite interesting when you do. But if either side, but you have to do this, like, you have to have a very strong thing that, like, I'm going to answer straightforward. I'm going to answer honestly, because at the end of the day, it's about outlining the nature of our disagreement and not trying to convince each other of anything.
Sure, I guess the
think-
biggest difference between you and Jim Bennett is that you're Mormon.
Well, speaking of that, going off of what you
said.
said, you were kind of successful in that, don't you think? You kind of did show.
Yeah.
Well, that was what I was trying to do. I was like, what Jim should have done was he should have just straight up said what he thought, and he should have just said, "This is our disagreement, Jacob. I think you're wrong. Here are my reasons why I think you're wrong." And if I asked him questions that he didn't know an answer to, like what is marriage, if he was acting in good faith,
That's a ridiculous question. That's a ridiculous question.
Yeah, it's like, what? And like, if you're a Latter-day Saint and marriage is a requirement for exaltation, asking what marriage is not a ridiculous question. It's like,
isn't that just
basic.
like,
and so,
no preamble, anything? What is marriage is not a ridiculous question. Like, we could just ask that out of the cold blue sky, and that's not a ridiculous question. It's like,
yeah, and a person should be able to, if you're a Latter-day Saint, you should just look right at the camera and say, "It is the solemn union between a man and a woman." Like,
Yeah.
it's complicated.
So one of the things that we kind of get on about is people acting like hatchlings, like newborn hatchlings who've never heard of a concept before.
Yeah.
And John or Jim saying that he doesn't know how he has a conversation with you, when to me you are what I thought Mormonism was the whole first 44 years of my life, and I'm not quite 44 yet. And
like you are a bog standard Orthodox believing Mormon.
it's what my family was all growing up, the war I was around all growing up, and then Jim acting like, I've never come across this before. I mean,
Dude, I honestly wonder the amount of, so in the suburbs around Salt Lake City, Murray,
That's where I'm
Sandy,
from.
those areas, dude, I don't know what is in the water over there, but I feel like half the time I hear of some crazy thing, it's in Sandy, Utah, or somewhere in those suburbs.
My ward, one street, if I hop the fence one way, April Despain, she lived right there. And then one street the other way was Lindsay Hansen Park. And that was my ward, like, right growing up. And the person who was beaten up on April Despain, that PTA president, she was just down the street the other way, and she was in my Sunday school class growing up.
That only happened on the west side of Murray.
But at the same time, still, it's like the west side of Murray. Yeah, Kevin's from the east side of it over there.
And I grew up in the ward with 3 of President Nelson's daughters.
Yeah,
Oh,
we
were on the celestial side.
Yeah, he did grow up with them. And in my ward, actually, my ex-girlfriend's dad married one of her daughters, right? One of his daughters. Lance Allred was also in my ward. He's the NBA player, the deaf guy. He's been on John DeLynne's thing too. But also Ricky from Cultural Hall was in my ward as well. But we kind of joke that it's like Forrest Gumpness of you go to Murray, my mom taught David Archuleta and all that sorts of stuff. Yeah.
The school district's nuts though now.
Yeah, the school district's been in the news, like in the national news
several times.
And it is just a stupid little suburb of
that. When like the first time Murray High made news is because I think it was when you guys were there, wasn't it? When you nominated a Down syndrome girl for homecoming queen.
I know the guy who nominated
she was in
her.
my ward.
Chris McCleary nominated her, and it was brought up in the general conference.
Yeah, she was in my ward growing up.
Yeah, she lived behind my girlfriend too. The same
Her
one
dad married me and my wife, by the way.
Yeah, and I know the guy who nominated
Shelly Iyer.
The church office building needs to do more recruitment in areas outside of the suburbs around it. That's my take.
Yeah,
doing it now.
But at the same time too, one of Kevin's and our take too is like almost all of online Mormonism is people who didn't grow up right here. DeLynne didn't come from here. Kwaku Carden aren't from here. You aren't from here. Like nobody's from. And part of Kevin and our take of it is, flip a little bit. Although Flip thinks it's all just kind of sixes. It's good, but it's not particularly good. But part of Kevin's my take of it is that man, the suburbs around here also get a bad rap. It was great. It was great here in the 90s. It was almost freaking paradise. And I myself,
I was in Kern, so it wasn't
all,
great for me.
I am convinced that Western civilization peaked in 1995,
yeah.
and that was like the glory days of everything.
Yeah, we kind of like make the joke that we're 1990s Amish. We should be Amish for the 90s. Like,
yeah, we always talk about this because I'm like 10 years younger than everyone here, so I didn't get to experience the peak of humanity. I just get to watch it die.
The most open and friendly and liberal, and I mean liberal is in like, you know, freedom of conscience, you know, get tolerance, get along to get along. Like the peak was Seinfeld's episode of, not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
Like that was the moment when America was the most together.
But the cookie, man, the cookie.
And I thought it was going to keep going that way, and boy, was I wrong. But I got to tell you, my Mormon Forrest Gump story is that I have seen Thomas Spencer Monson, late prophet of the church, without a shirt on, and I've seen Thomas Spencer Monson the third, his grandson, without a shirt on, in different times in different places.
How?
In the early 90s, I was at a swimming pool in Heber, and Thomas Monson, he was an apostle then, but Thomas Monson went swimming, and he was there, and we met him, and we said hi, and he was just nice. And then I had the seventh grade gym class.
He was shredded.
But did you take a dump in Howard Hughes's pool?
No, damn it, I didn't do that.
That's Jim Bennett.
Yeah.
I was there. Flip, you and I worked at the Salt House. I was there when Bob Bennett, Jim Bennett's dad, lost his primary election. That might have been the
primaried out.
And I saw him walking down the hall crying after that thing ended. But that's one of the things I wanted to bring up, and we've mentioned it over on Thoughtful Saints. But how much do you think Jim's politics play into the situation there? Because you've been taking on Dan McClellan, you've been taking on Jim Bennett. Both of them are political, like they're current candidates, up and coming candidates.
How much does it affect it? Okay, guys, let's be real here. Okay, have you guys noticed that we get together, we can have a wonderful conversation because we all are roughly ideologically aligned, and then Jim Bennett can go on with like Bill Reel, and they can all be buddies. And same with like, you guys notice where the lines are?
Yep.
The lines here, this whole thing is a big sham because this is all ideological, and I don't say political because I hate sort of the political left and right spectrum thing, because what this is, politics is driven by ideology. Okay, it is. You guys, like me, hold to a particular ideological worldview where we all respect the Western tradition and Western liberalism and kind of the classical liberal tradition of the West. And but even then, that tradition is rooted in something deeper. And so that's the reason that we all kind of still have the same, I mean, we have our differences, obviously, but we have the same sort of basic lens that we bring to the table. And so the problem is that you have competing religions. And you guys talk about the, are we all cutting out here? You guys still hear me?
No, you're there.
You're good.
It's all just you.
It's you.
We're hearing you at least.
Oh, it's just me. Sorry. Okay.
No, we hear you.
I'm gonna pull over here in a second so I can make sure that Okay, cool.
Don't pull over in Sparks.
But you guys talk about the
I
blue
broke
church.
down in Sparks and it scared me.
Hey, that's where I'm from. But real quick, the lines here are between the two ideological camps and their worldviews, the way they look at the world. You guys look at the world still in a way at individuals, at individual rights, but they don't. They look at it through this collective lens of social justice, of oppressor versus oppressed. And that is the divide in the church. It's the divide in greater society. And unless we address that, like that was kind of what I was trying to do, is draw the line between Jim and I, saying, Jim, we're in the same church, but we're not in the same church. And that is really a big problem. And unless we address that in the church, it's not good. Like
it seems like you got these.
Well, I can answer this for Jim for you. You're in the same church, but he's doing it right. Weren't you listening? You're just being Mormon wrong, Jacob.
He's 20 years ahead of being right.
It feels like
it's
there's
gonna catch up to him.
There's overarching sort of ideology maybe that sums it all up, but also there's these little clubs within the ideology, and I feel like there's a difference. It's not that there's two types of people. That's a dumb thing to say, but it feels like there are some people who are willing to use those clubs sort of deceitfully for their own gains, and other people who don't, who say, actually, this club doesn't work for the things that I believe. And I feel like that's what it is with Mormonism to me. I'm like, it doesn't really work for some of the things I believe. And so I'm not going to be part of it. I'm not going to try to change it to fit these things that I believe are true. Right. But then you see Jim Bennett, because I was really glad that you kind of cornered him on that question, asking him, do you think that homosexuality is sinful? And because I don't think that, so I don't. And
real quick.
I left the club.
That wasn't what I asked him, though. I asked him specifically if gay marriage was inherently sinful. And the reason I ask that is because it's a specific question. I'm sick of people always beating around the bush and, talking about tolerance and, inclusion and all this stuff. And I'm going, you guys, do you believe, if you don't believe that gay marriage is inherently sinful as a Latter-day Saint, like, why don't you just admit that and quit playing these throwing sand in the air and smoke and acting?
You're moving the goalpost.
Wait till he learns what ad hominem means.
well, that's the thing, is I want to. So I was just talking about with Steve Heinecker. He actually called me today to talk about the interview, and I was mentioning this, and this is the postmodernist world we live in. They constantly want to blur the boundaries. It's all about blurring boundaries. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing about truth. Truth creates boundaries. It draws the lines of distinction. One of the best lines I ever heard is that philosophy and the pursuit of truth is about making distinctions. And if you notice that all of queer theory, all these things, it's about getting rid of the distinctions. In other words, it's about creating less truth, muddying the waters, creating confusion. And if I were to state if I were to say what the state of the church right now is, the current state of the church is a state of confusion. Because everyone is blurring the lines.
That's the entire.
Well, it was very telling that he actually absolutely refused to answer that question, and that's kind of why we come to the conclusion that it's all about his politics, because he can't lose the church, because if he loses the church, there's no way he can get elected to anything, right? But
well, Jim is running
the absolute refusal to be like yes or no, like, because I would have said, I'd been like, no, I don't think it's sinful. That's why I left the club, right? But he doesn't want to say that because he doesn't want to leave the club. But he also doesn't want to leave the other club that he's joined, his other religion. He's got two conflicting religions that he can't choose between.
This ideology doesn't believe in leaving and creating new institutions.
They're about corrupting.
Right.
It's about disrupting existing institutions.
It's parasitical.
Yeah, it's wear it like a skin suit. Put it on. And
Jim is running for office. He's running for elected office to represent the state of confusion.
Yeah. Well, and then you have people
legislature.
You got Jackson Washburn. Okay,
that guy.
Jackson goes to Harvard Divinity School, and I asked him what his definition of marriage is today, and he talks about individuals committed to each other. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, if you go to Harvard Divinity School and you can't figure out the definition of marriage.
Well,
actually, I think you're probably more likely to have a shitty definition of marriage if you go to Harvard Divinity School.
Jackson does the new hatchling thing too. He acts a little bit like, "What do you mean we're trying to infiltrate the church and change it?" I'm not doing that. He knows perfectly well what they're all doing.
Oh yeah, that reminds me of
my thing. I just point my finger at it and I just say, "Look what they're doing, everyone." I just ask straight up questions. They spin around, they scream and yell, and it's like, I'm just asking you directly what you're doing, but they don't want to say it.
Mhm.
They don't want to let the cat out the bag. And that's the part that I can't stand the most. I don't care if people believe different from me. I'm online with all you guys who have very different opinions on me on matters of the church and its truth claims. But you're honest.
Yeah,
Just be honest
that's where we stand
That's what
too.
we just
Really,
say,
it's like
yeah.
just say what it
Just
is and
say
do
it.
it. Don't go
Yep.
trying to like trick
Yeah.
people into here or use vagaries and use.
Because that thing's like, I mean, I don't agree that like marriage is defined as a monogamous heterosexual male couple or heterosexual male and female couple. Like, okay, that's a definition, and it's the Mormon definition. And like,
I think temple ceiling
legally
is defined
we
as
can
that.
have
like if you say
like,
temple ceiling, it is defined. as
yeah,
that.
sure.
Well, no,
Just
well,
that, like, so like
okay.
you can have a civil marriage that doesn't conform to the Mormon, and it's just that it doesn't conform to the Mormon standard, and it's not that hard to make that distinction.
Well,
The
nobody
Mormons
wants
have
to.
a standard, non-Mormons have another standard. We all live
But there's
together.
a little
It's
bit
not
of
that hard to figure out.
there's a little bit of a difference though with a Latter-day Saint, because if you're coming from the Latter-day Saint perspective, you believe that this definition was given by God, and that the institution of marriage is not a social construct, but a divinely ordained institution.
That's
And
not
so-
just Mormons.
Well,
Yeah, but I
that's
guess-
fine. But Latter-day Saints definitely, and I would agree with you. I think this is
But
a
that's
Christian thing
that's
there.
actually to throw a bone that the entire concept of marriage, the word marriage, and the whole idea of marriage, it was concept creep to add homosexual marriage into that.
Yeah, no, it
It-
absolutely
it-
was. Yeah,
Like
I
the
agree
word.
with that.
But if the word marriage and if a marriage as an institution without any sort of divine ordination, and it is just a social construct, well then it's just, in my mind, it's like, who cares? Like, especially like with the state, I would like keep the state out of marriage and don't like I would find marriage pointless at that point. Like, it's like a nice romantic gesture for someone that you want to.
Well, no, like, so I mean,
like
back
to
in
get
the
nice flowers for a girl, you get her a
I
wedding
think
ring, you give her
I
some flowers.
actually think
when
you
I was
made
a
the point
Mormon-
with Jim, and it was a good point when you made it. Is that it? He says it doesn't affect my marriage, and you say, but does it affect marriage rates? And
Yeah.
even Nietzsche pointed out that every civilization, when it defined marriage most piously, is when it was most on fire. You know, it's part of the civilizational cycle.
To imagine the you got like the change in the way the world views marriage since 2008 is to now is absolutely one of the greatest social changes in the history of the Western world. To remember, guys, in 2008, California couldn't pass gay marriage. Barack Obama was running on a straight marriage platform, and now the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is having to swing like crazy to keep gay marriage from basically being endorsed by all of its members.
well,
I'm of the belief that even homosexuals, if they took a big step back and looked at the health of their civilization, they would want to take a step back and say, okay, the government civilizationally, what it should be behind is the type of marriage that helps this place grow and create and flourish.
And I want there to be civil unions, just FYI. Okay, this never was about not allowing people to have legal rights with one another. But the thing is that, and I made a video about this. When I remember, because I asked people back in the day, I remember asking people, well, if we grant civil unions, like, what's the problem? You have the equal legal rights. And Ellen DeGeneres talked about this. She said, no, we want the term marriage. We need to have the same respect socially. So it wasn't about legal rights. It was about changing the social and moral definition of what a marriage was. And they wildly succeeded.
So I guess my question would be, like, if you provide them all the same legal protections, and it's just a different word at that point, then what exactly? Because if what you're saying is that gay marriage,
the idealism of a nation.
Sure, but I'm saying if what you're saying is that gay marriage or changing marriage to include gay people or whatever could cause the downfall of a nation in some way, then how exactly would a civil union not do the same thing? If it
Yeah.
provides all the same things minus
my
the word.
whole problem with have all the exact same rights but call it civil unions, then it's a distinction without a difference. It just seems kind of silly. But here's the thing though, where I think you and Jim both missed the point.
Can I clarify this real quick? Because I think it's very important. The definition of marriage as the union between a man and a woman, and the extolling culturally, not legally, culturally of the institution is incredibly important. What if you guys watch the Joe Rogan interview with Matt Walsh, where they debate over gay marriage? Matt Walsh did a bad job, but Joe Rogan exposed something. Because he was asked basically like, well, then why does marriage matter? Like what? Who cares? Why do you need to have like the state? And he's kind of like, you're kind of right. Like, what is the point? If it's just the union of two people who love each other, it doesn't have anything to do with children or family. It's nothing different than like a more fancy gesture of like getting someone flowers. It's like, I love you so much, we're gonna call ourselves married. And it's like, well, that like, why would you do that?
No, but this raises a whole bunch of issues. Because number one, when you say like, oh, marriage is this thing, like, well, it's that thing. That's the predominant idea in our culture, but it's not. That's not the predominant form of marriage in all cultures through time and space. But also, secondly, like you raise this issue that. Well, no, it depends on who you talk to. But I agree basically with you that our concept of marriage is about raising families and all that stuff. But the thing is, like, this is part of the issue for me. Is like, why? Because for the church, marriage is a sacred sacrament. It is a thing handed down from God and all this other stuff. So why do they even care? Like, to me, it was kind of weird where it's like, why do I have to go to the county and give them $35 and create a legal corporation if this is just about God and stuff? But also, this is what I wanted to get at. The point, though, where I think you and Jim both kind of missed the point on the church's changing stance about marriage and gay marriage, because you guys were talking about it as though it was a doctrinal issue, and I think it was 100% a pragmatic legal issue. Because like I was in California during Prop 22. If you remember Prop 22, I was there for Prop 22, and I remember all of that fight. And that thing's like, because the part where everybody was kind of playing hide the ball, the church doesn't really care if non-Mormons get gay married. I don't think they really care. Like, I think the Mormons are basically liberals in that idea of freedom of conscience. What they are genuinely concerned about, and it's a valid concern, is that people want to make it so the church has to perform gay marriages. Obviously, people want that. Jackson wants that. Lots of people want that. And the church and the church lawyers saw this a long, long time ago. And that's the thing. It's like, the church didn't change its doctrine a couple years back when it came out in favor of the new law. It's because the new law protected in perpetuity the church's right to not have to perform marriages it doesn't sanction on a religious basis.
Yeah,
that's
that one that Jim was trying to say that.
I think Jacob, you were kind of going in that
law that it was going opposed to what the Prop 8 stuff was. That was completely wrong. I mean, it was a whole different concept.
If I remember, Jacob, you kind of were skirting toward that.
And then
maybe he was, and then he got told to sit down and shut up.
Yeah, and didn't want to hear the point. But I think you kind of brought up the point in polygamy.
That your Flip is 100% right. The church made a pragmatic call. They were explicit. Elks talked about it. Here's the trade-off. We already lost the battle. Sorry, guys. I might be cutting out here. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, but I also have to stop because the thing is like, because this is the ex-Mormon part of me, is the church didn't come out and say what they were doing. They played hide the ball too. They didn't just come out and say like, look, this is what we're worried about. There's a movement from multiple directions that ultimately want to tell us what marriage
you don't think they did? Kevin, I brought it up a million times with Kevin. The right after the Supreme Court legalized marriage, Oaks made a statement the very next day and basically said
I
exactly.
guess so. I just mean that. I mean the
He-
chapel message. The
And back
message
then,
that
I thought it was gauche. I thought he was being a bit like, "Come on, it's not going to slippery slope like that." And I was wrong. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
he was right. You know that they were going to start moving in that direction. And
we've all learned about the slippery slope in the last few years when you got dudes that don't know if they're dudes or not, and dudes winning.
They can
Well, according
breastfeed,
to
though.
Cardin Ellis, people
Pageants.
only invoke logical fallacies when they don't have a point.
They're men can breastfeed now, but
I keep forgetting.
yeah. So yeah,
How many of Dan's kids do you think he breastfed? By the way,
We have to take a look at them, but I'm guessing
I'm
all.
driving through kind of a bad area, so if I cut out here for a second, I'll jump back on. But I might cut out.
Western Nevada is a bad area.
I thought he meant like really high
We
crime.
got to go at you hard because we got
I don't want to. You go to hell.
we've got Marty and Forrest champing at the bit, wanting us to.
I remember him.
So,
I
yeah,
remember the
Forrest
first time
is
I made the
asking-
drive. The first time I made the drive out of California into Nevada on I-80, and I just remember even having this thought because, like, you see the sign that says "Welcome to Nevada," and I felt like God hit the ugly switch because, like, you're in these beautiful high ponderosa pines and the great big mountains, and then like. Just like a switch, it's just a brown hellscape, and you're there for another 10 hours until you get to Salt Lake City.
that's basically Wyoming too.
Forrest is wanting clarification here. He wants me to ask you if you think that my marriage is valid. And to tell you, my marriage, I was married in the temple. We've since broken all of our covenants, obviously. We're not really. We never.
Okay, I'm about to.
We never removed our records. But anyway, he's asked.
Here's something to throw a little bit of a curveball. Me and my wife aren't sealed.
What?
I'm actually still my.
Hold on,
I'm
you guys-
actually
you
still
guys-
sealed to my
hold on,
Do you even
ex-wife.
have blessings?
Okay, so here. How about this?
I can answer. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say we were. So my son just left on his mission, but a couple months back he received his endowments. We were at the temple. In the temple, here's me and my wife, and then there's my ex-wife. And I leaned over to my wife, and I was just like, it's really weird that I'm only sealed to one person. And that's my ex-wife. Anyway, go ahead.
Well,
Answer the questions, the hard questions.
So what he's getting at though
Yes,
is that
yes.
like so he's trying to ask basically if a gay marriage is invalid, are secular straight marriages also invalid?
But we already know that, like it.
That's just what
celestially, yes, we know, right? I mean, yeah.
Sure, and I'm not offended by anybody who thinks that.
It's
Jim Bennett, we know the answer.
I'll answer it quite simply. It's fairly simple to answer. It's that a marriage is defined as the union between a man and a woman. Now, the church, there are certain kinds of unions that last for this life. They're a commitment that the church recognizes, even if they're done outside the church, that the church recognizes that those are binding oaths that have been made between people for this life. They're still marriages. There's still men and women engaging in a union of that the church recognizes legitimate. The question is, but gay marriage is something different conceptually. They're a union not of a man and a woman, but of couples of opposite or of the same gender.
I
don't even know why I'm getting off into the weeds with this because, honestly, I don't really even want Mormonism to start accepting
like when you say like marriage is defined as between a man and a woman, like it's not. Like that's the traditional norm.
You mean
that's not all it is or has ever been.
Holder and anybody he's sealed to.
You know, because like that's what I was going to say earlier. Because like when I was an active Mormon, and like late '90s when I first got into this debate, and earlier on I was like, I said that like, hey, it's a man and a woman, and the thing, one of the arguments that swayed me was the basic liberal argument was the whole thing about like, it's not. All this stuff you talk about, like, oh, it's this union, blah, 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 blah. For me, it was the nuts and bolts, the legality of it, which is hospital visitation, inheritance, all this crap, where it's like, for those reasons, like, yeah, why can't we let people get married? If they want to sign up for the legal corporation that you create when you get married, I couldn't make any, like, I mean,
But
the
that was
theological
civil,
argument is that
that
like
was
God
there was
doesn't want you to
civil
do
union,
that. But
wasn't it?
well, yeah, but again, though, that's the whole problem. It's like where, like, if you have something called
Then it just
marriage
feels like
and
it's
it
a
comes with
word.
a set of rights, and you have something called civil unions,
You're
and it's
right,
something
but you're
all
Harari's
the
just
same
right.
rights.
But that's the original point. We're going back to Harari, just saying, well, money is just a myth or something like that. Is that no? It's not just a myth.
That's my point. It's, you guys were talking about legality versus like morality.
Well, yeah, but I think that you're conflating them.
The thing is that no, marriage, like, if you think that marriage is just some sort of a legal arrangement.
No, I didn't say it's just such a legal arrangement, but
then what do you say? What
that's
is
the
it?
argument. Like when people say, "Oh, I want," like that's things because, like, you know, when I was a Mormon, and they said, "I want to be gay married," and I'm like, "Well, what's stopping you from just having a private ceremony?" You know, like, because that's the thing. It's like, because that's the thing. The thing, like I mentioned before, it kind of cracks me up about Mormons is they're like, marriage is this holy God thing, and you have to do it through the state. You know, like, this is one thing where I think the fundamentalists, if anything, have a hand up on on the Salt Lake Church, is they don't see marriage as having anything to do with the government. There's no reason to go and pay $35 at the county office and have a justice of the peace.
Yeah, why wouldn't
you
shouldn't
know?
the church, like, the church should separate from the government?
Yeah, shouldn't the church just say, no, like, there's LDS marriage, and that is the thing that God ordained, and then there's a legal corporation called marriage, and that's something you do to get along in society. But the church doesn't make a distinction between those things. They tie them together in practice.
Historically, we definitely did, because our marriages weren't sanctioned by the state.
Well, yeah, and until the state threatened to shut down the church.
You're right. And no, not didn't threaten, but actually started confiscating our property. It was wild. But real quick, though, very important thing here. Flip, outside of legal context, what is a marriage to you? Is it just a legal arrangement?
It's the thing you talk about where two people decide that they're going to hitch up with each other in this grand cosmic romantic way, you know, the till death do us part thing. Like, we're a team now, and we're doing this to better ourselves and our family.
Why would a person do that outside of a family?
For the reasons I just said.
I know, but
we're a team now. I'm devoted to you.
Children, and like raising a family.
Because you want to have a nice house with dogs, and you want to do it with a team member that you can trust and rely upon. You know,
so why
somebody
do you have
that
to
you
get
don't
married to do that.
Huh?
Why do you have to have some little ceremony to do that?
You can take half of your stuff.
So because if one of you ends up in the hospital,
but you're
the
talking
other
about
one
that's
can't.
legally. I'm talking outside of the legal.
Talking about the metaphysics, the metaphysical idea of what it is.
For all the same motivations that Mormons believe it metaphysically. They have a desire. They feel like it's a thing they want to do. They want to make a personal commitment to another person.
No. But it's more than that in Mormonism.
Well, I know, but that's in Mormonism. But you asked me, why would anybody want to do that? Those are the reasons I give.
I know, but what I'm saying is, outside of the reasons that Mormonism gives of raising a family and creating a social unit with moral obligations to one another, this metaphysical unit, as you might call it, like, what's the purpose of that unit? If not to raise a family and to propagate the species in a stable and coherent way. If it's just a romantic relationship, then why just two people?
I didn't say it's just a romantic relationship, but this is where, but this is a common, it comes up all the time. A common rejoinder to this is, how about devoted, active, worthy, married couples that are incapable of having children?
They'll be capable after the resurrection. It's simple.
It for?
That's not hard.
No, because they're like, no, it's
going to be able to have children in the resurrection of the dead.
No, because then why do it now?
Because they
why
want.
not just wait until you get to heaven and then get to it? Because you want to be with somebody and be devoted and all that crap.
You're right. That is, I would say that's part of it, but that isn't the end goal of it. That is
okay, but you're smuggling in Mormon values into all marriage. Like, I'm fine with you defining Mormonism as, like, Mormon marriage is what it is, but what Mormons define marriage isn't the be all and end all
Well,
of
it
marriage.
seems like
I'm trying to understand outside of our context. I don't see any purpose for marriage. If I was not a believer,
I don't know.
and
You want to ask my gay friends?
I would go get.
Why
I would
are
go
you
get,
married?
Well, no, but seriously,
I'd
like
say the closest thing is a statement of devotion, right? It's because you can
Yeah,
date
no,
somebody, and if you got the boyfriend, the classic archetype of the boyfriend who won't commit, who won't get married. He's dated this girl
Yeah.
for several years,
No,
but he
it-
won't get married to her. That's because he's afraid to commit for a lifetime, right? And
What
I
it
think
is
that's
is
the
that-
main
well,
idea
why
behind
would
marriage.
I
Is
commit to
The
one
other
woman for a
thing that
lifetime?
marriage does,
What
the
a
other thing that
stupid
marriage
thing
does,
to
Jacob,
do.
because you love her.
the other
Well,
thing
I
that
love-
marriage does
I
outside
love her
of the
right
legal
now,
stuff,
but what if she porks out and acts like a beezy down the road in a few years?
the
It's
other
dude,
thing
better
that
for
a
worse.
marriage
Damn it, I'm a
does-
romantic.
Well, that's
The
my
other
whole thing.
thing-
It's this
That
it's
is-
this silly romantic thing, and a guy
No,
is
it's not.
stupid
It's not just
for
that.
tying
You're trying to
himself
reduce
a
it
woman.
to something.
I
You're trying to
would-
reduce it to something that it's not necessarily. Because another thing that marriage does, it is a public announcement. We are a unit now, and so please
Yeah, why
don't
would I
mess
do
with
that?
that.
Why
because
would I
you
do
want
that?
to preserve because you want to preserve what you've got, because you think that it's worth keeping. You know, like why does the church
Why is it worth?
advise
Why is it worth
men
keeping
not
one
to go
woman?
on to be alone with other married or single women? Because it opens up all kinds of opportunity for society and family destroying activity. You know, it's not that
Well,
hard to figure out.
No, I think you are getting at it when you say that the marriage is about sustaining family and social units. But my
No,
question
that's a
is,
big
as
part
an
of it. It's
individual,
not all of it, though. It's not everything.
as
Did
an
you ever see-
individual, as an individual man, what is the like? And I don't want to have children. I don't want to have a family. Why would I ever hitch my wagon to one woman when I don't know what she's going to be like long term? Why not be
Well,
able to have more than one woman?
Here's a crazy thing. You don't have to believe in God to have an act of faith and to put faith into someone else.
I think what Sam
Like,
Adams
I mean,
says here is
to
being
put it very
underestimated
directly,
because
like just to give you
there's-
one example, Jacob, is I had the situation myself a couple of years ago when I was driving back from a doctor's appointment, and I had the very sad and heavy realization that like I don't have an emergency contact. My parents are too old, you know, like they can't jump out of bed and come save me if I'm, you know, in a coma somewhere, or come deal with all the things that need to be dealt with. You know, there's just that. Like if you can find somebody that that is devoted to you and you're devoted to them, there's safety in numbers. And
Yeah.
getting married, even if you do it as a personal private thing and not as a government thing, there's also that factor of you
Okay.
are announcing to the world, this is
now
my
you're-
partner, this is the person I've hitched up to, this is the
Yes.
person you talk to if something happens to me.
Yeah, and fair enough. I could also see that being friends of mine and others. Marriage as originally, and the thing is, the
Again,
definition
if you keep
of
talking about marriage as
changed.
originally conceived, Jacob,
Hold on.
you don't know how marriage was originally conceived. I don't know. Nobody knows. It goes back far deeper than Christianity.
You're right, but it goes back to basic family formations.
Well, no, but we
Families
don't know
have
what that
always
is.
been rooted. Families have always, historically, so far as we can tell, have been rooted in unions between men and women.
Well, yes
Okay.
and no. Like because there's the Western, like we have a very Western idea of nuclear families. Now, I'm not an expert by any means, but
I never
if you've
said
ever
nuclear
dabbled in
families. I said-
Confucianism,
I actually
they have
would
a
say
very
that
different
most-
conception of this.
Well, no, I would say you're missing the point here a little bit. I'm not saying even I would say polygamy is probably more normal historically, but regardless, there were structures of men and women who united with one another to care for children because men and women like to have sex with each other and babies show up. And what they
Do?
found is that if you lassoed the men in to their women to take care of them and their children, you had a much more stable society. And so the entire concept of marriage and social organization that has existed amongst human beings for thousands of years was centered around a family dynamic of mother, father, and children. And when you redefine marriage into something that is essentially just a public declaration of your love for each other, what it does, it cheapens the institution to the point that no one really cares about it. And that's why
I
our
don't
marriage
think
rates
so.
are falling apart.
No, I
Well,
mean,
marriage
Man,
is
I just
I don't
came
really-
here to dunk on Jim Bennett.
I know. But like, I don't know, because there's a couple of things, like you're making some assumptions there. Because first off, lots of marriages don't have children, and we don't consider those marriages lesser or to be pointless, or they're not doing marriage right. The other thing is,
it's the
But
idealism of it.
that's because
The
it's
idealism
LDS
of it matters.
theology.
It's one of the things we've been on about for a long time, or at least we've been pointing to, is the metaphysical, the thing that's added and tacked on to the whole general idealist. Like idealism never means that you hit the ideal; it's that you have the ideal, and the idealism of it matters. It matters. It's part of the whole metaphysic of everything that we're talking about. Is that people go putting this extra super high level kind of concept overlay onto the idea of the thing, and that doesn't just help the Jim Bennett's little individual life, it helps entire societies survive and thrive. It's bigger than, like there's this whole thing of like the Enlightenment, like I was talking about with the Adorno thing, the Enlightenment era of people who want to demystify everything, and they think it's just a marriage, it's just like Harari saying it's just money, it's just dollars. It's a little bit of a thing of saying like no, the idealism of the whole entire group, of the whole entire society matters, because one of the things Spengler points out at is as soon as a society starts planning children is the end of it. Like give it 80 years, it's over. And it's there's a whole just entire concept that if we look at a bigger, longer range of societies that matters, it's not just a thing. It's not just the pragmatic legal thing.
Okay, and now Jacob, like, and now this is a hypothetical, and it is just an either or thing, but I'm setting it up to illustrate the idea, because this is another thing about like when I was a Mormon that kind of made me change my thoughts on this, was that like, so hypothetical, two gay evangelical conservative men, they go to church, they're devoted to Christ, they vote Republican, and they want to get married and adopt children and raise them in the church, their evangelical church. Should they not do that?
I am okay with gay adoptions so long as that heterosexual couples basically have had that there aren't heterosexual couples available to adopt the children. I believe the ideal arrangement for a child is to have a mother and a father. And if you say otherwise, you basically are saying that mothers or fathers are not necessary.
Listen to that.
I have to point out that Chris and I have an acquaintance. We have a friend who was adopted by a heterosexual Mormon couple that sexually abused her and all of her adopted siblings.
There's going to be fallout. There's going to
there's going to be fallout anyway. But I mean, how do you make that preference? Like, because that's the thing. It's like, that was one of the things that shifted me, was that my parents were heterosexual and Mormon, and they were terrible parents. Our family was garbage, despite all of our best efforts and all of our
there's always
our family sucks.
John DeLynn said it today.
That happens.
John DeLynn agreed with Jacob Hansen. He said it today. As soon as you set an ideal, there's going to be a marginalized. It's how society is. It's just how truth is.
So that thing's like, for me, from a libertarian perspective, like I've seen really bad heterosexual families. I've seen really good homosexual families.
Mary Harrington talked about it today. But on the Tajal thing that we showed earlier, she talked about when we go do these new things on the Vanguard, it's always the children who are really actually being experimented.
They paid the price.
I think what Jacob's saying here is that like if you could assign points to a marriage, right, to a couple that's willing to adopt a kid, that a man and a woman with 50 marriage points or whatever, and a man with 50 marriage points, he would say that the man and the woman would do it better. I think that's saying
that man and women get more points for being man and woman. And
that's what I'm saying. Like what I'm saying is that I think what Jacob's trying to get at is that all things equal, he would prefer the man and woman to the man.
All
and the
things
man.
Being equal,
because you're trying to bring up the cases that, like,
I guess, but there's
going to be anecdotal evidences of because I could bring up anecdotal evidences of really morbidly obese person who is a lot healthier.
But I mean, the thing is like this is an impossible idea.
What Christopher Rice is saying is the exact point Mary Harrington made, is that if you go deciding that, you've chosen for that child to rob them of a mother. You've chosen for that.
Yeah.
Of them. And they are different things. And you are the one putting them through the current new experiment that we've decided
Well,
as a society
like,
is
I mean,
it's
and-
just
and
the
like,
gift
Cliff,
of
would
justice.
you-
If we're going to have a test for marriage, because that's the thing, is like, what
not
about
saying there should be a
heterosexual
test.
couples? Like, well, that's the thing though. It's like, because I mean, this points thing. Like, if there are some heterosexual couples where like, okay, you're screwed up, you have a whole bunch of unresolved sexual issues. We are not granting you this marriage license because you guys are clearly not ready for it.
It's not
You
marriage
know?
license. I think he's saying license to adopt. Basically, would be the thing.
Well,
And I'm
I
and
don't
I'm
know, it's
I'm not
kind
even
of the
saying
same thing.
I agree, but it's sort of like the standard of which one of these in the
I
ideal
think-
situation would be better.
And I agree. So here's an example. If you have some couple that wants to adopt kids and they got drug problems and all this, but they're heterosexual, and then you have some really good gay couple, like send them with the gay couple. You know what I mean? I'm not saying it's like
Okay,
it says.
but that's the thing is, but we
equal.
don't know. That's the thing is like the reality is that we can't know all these things. We can't find out all of these
But
things.
we
People
can
lie about things.
but we can know that if we send a child to live with two men, that we've robbed them of a mother. We do know that.
And you
I
have
guess, but,
situations
like,
where
I
you
could have
have
done
these
without my
surrogates
mother.
where they're paying for surrogates and paying to go do that situation. And Mary made the point just today. She said,
Yeah.
you've made a decision for that kid's life to run an experiment on him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess so. I just because like I mean, you know, for me, like I said, like that was
So I don't-
one of my faith
I
issues
don't
was that
condemn
like I
gay
couldn't see
couples
anything
who have
special about
kids.
Mormon families.
I don't
know?
I don't condemn gay couples that have adopted kids if they're raising those kids good, because I do know that there are some really bad situations that those kids will end up in. But in my mind, that's a failing of heterosexual couples to not be there for them. There should be good heterosexual couples who are willing to adopt those children and bring them into their
Well,
family.
my understanding.
I think
is
that there
a
are,
wait
but then
list
you
generally.
got the issues of the state controlling that,
Yes.
because
Yeah,
they're
I
the
guess
ones
that's a whole other
who they're
issue.
the ones with the keys of the kingdom, really.
So should we
Yep.
have privatized adoption services? Has
Oh,
that?
I mean,
are there any examples of that going wrong? I don't know. That's the thing. Is like this gets back to that Thomas Sowell quote that we love so much. There are no solutions. There are only trade-offs.
Well, I always tell people that when we get into these arguments about gay people adopting, because I'm like, it seems to be probably the case that a mother and a father is better than like two fathers or two mothers or whatever. I think that seems kind of obvious with the research, but
Yeah.
we're not ripping kids away from a loving mother and father who are well adjusted. It's kids from like crack houses and stuff that are hopefully going to two loving fathers or whatever, and it's obviously preferable.
Yeah.
I don't even think we have all that many disagreements on this.
I think for a society to have any chance of surviving or thriving or growing or flourishing, the initial should be obvious. Like the ideal should be obvious. This should be a mother, father, child, family.
Yeah.
The should be obvious. And then
And
everything from there on.
That's marriage is the foundation of that. That's my point. On the metaphysical level, that's what a marriage is. It's the institution that creates the mother, father, parent, child relationship.
Then
And
of
it
course,
organizes it around that.
then of course from there on out we have fallout and stuff that we got to sort as it goes down. But that society across the board should start with that should if it wants to become some kingdom of heaven on earth.
I mean, well, yeah, but this is where like the ideal meets reality. It's like, you know, every pizza should have a properly proofed, well-handled crust.
But this is the part of exactly. That's what the ideal is. So I'm able to say that. So you have these gay people who get offended to this. I'm a 44-year-old who has no kids, is currently not married. I should have been married much younger and had kids already right now.
Yeah.
Should I be cursing at the skies and yelling because somebody said that to me? Like, no, it's just what the should is. That's what the should be for a proper growing, flourishing society.
I think a lot of it is look at like what's, you know, Jake kind of has the collective witness model, but like look at like the collective witness of like heterosexual married couples versus the collective witness right now of say like the whole pride movement. Like which one really is going to be the fertile soil for a child to grow up and have the greatest likelihood of a balanced life rooted in a structure that's going to allow them to have a strong mental health, you know, be mentally healthy and healthy in all aspects. If you look at like what's happening in society right now, I know where I'm going to put my bet.
Yeah, that's
But at the
fair.
same time, too, is like if you have like a different life than that, it doesn't mean that the should
Yeah.
be different for the society. Like
I know, that's where I
you
thought,
go
like,
figuring yourself out from there. If you're gay
that was
or if you're
the
somebody
peak
who didn't figure out
1995
kids,
thing, which
or
is
you
like,
can't have babies, that doesn't change what the should is.
in
That- and-
1995, if you wanted to just be super gay swinger and didn't want to be bothered, there were places you could go. Like, that's the Castro district of San Francisco was one place where it's like, this is the place where our values prevail. And the rest of America, even if they were disapproving, were just like, well, all right then, and there you go. That's liberalism. You don't have to play along with our game. You can go do your thing, but
But the thing is on the metaphysical level, the issue is that we've changed what the ideal is. We've when you erase the concept of marriage between a man and a woman as the ideal, and now the concept of marriage is now just whatever two individuals want to pledge that they want to be together forever. You've changed the concept of what this institution
well,
is.
no,
and what
again,
it's
because like
about.
you're bringing it back down to, well, it's about this heterosexual pairing. When we've just spent all this time talking about all of the other things that are a marriage that have nothing to do with the sexes of the people involved.
He's talking about what the ideal is, though. Like, do you not think that was the ideal of the United States or Western America or Utah or
Europe?
I mean,
I don't know. I think it was the only thing for most of Western civilization. Yeah, that was just the default accepted mode of marriage.
Not the mode. Worked. It's the ideal marriage. It's not what happened. Like, well, no, what happens. But
because homosexual marriage wasn't even a concept to them. Like, it wasn't even that you could bring up seriously. Homosexuality wasn't a concept.
I brought this point before I talk. It's one of those things that Dissident Right talks about: is pronomian society versus antinomian society, and it's switching. Like Jacob's right that for up until who knows how long ago we can really point at. A lot of people point to the 60s, but it was a pronomian society that had a pious view of what religion should be, or what a family should be, the concept should be. It was very conservative and square, just the general on average should of the average person. But it's switching to an antinomian view, which is like, it's who's to say what say anything goes type deal. And that's where you get behavioral sync. And the behavioral sync is what it just means is the society is going to go the way the society is going to go. And a lot of the different people I point at are just saying, hey, that's just the cycle of it, man. It's just over for you.
They just erase the ideals. You erase all the boundaries. You erase all the shoulds. And then what you get is you assuage everyone from feeling shame, but then you get everyone not knowing what in the hell is going on. And you get utter chaos. Hey guys, I gotta go off camera and mute my mic for just a minute. I'll be back in a sec.
Yeah.
It seemed like we decided to get rid of all of the shoulds except for consent. We still like that one.
Consent's a good should. Some shoulds are good.
Sometimes we like it.
Well, sometimes I'm saying, like, I was just listening to a thing on consent today where that we've taken consent to such an absurd level now that it's like, no, we need enthusiastic consent, like absolutely. And it's, if she just says yeah, and it's the weirdest part because it's always coming from feminists who seem to think that women are idiots who can't consent, and it absolutely ruins everything. I was like, hey, I asked my wife, I was like, would you like this to be our marital life? And I showed her the comic of the guy just saying, like, okay, is this okay? And every time they move around or he kisses her on the neck, or is this okay? Are you okay with this? Like, yeah. And she's like, no, I'm not an idiot. Don't treat me like I'm an idiot.
We like consent until we go see The Sound of Freedom.
Oh yeah. Just yesterday I was watching, there's a YouTuber that he's this British guy that I don't know why, but he speaks fluent Russian. And he does travel documentaries where he basically goes to all of the shittiest shitholes of the former Soviet Union. And it's really fascinating. And he had this whole episode of traveling through Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. And like at one point, like they pick up a couple of Kazakh babushkas to give them a ride somewhere, and they're asking them because like apparently like in Kazakh society, the way courtship works is that a man literally kidnaps the woman that he wants to marry, and then they're married. And
Wow.
like and like he has these two babushkas in the back of the cars, like, so like were you kidnapped? And like, yeah. And they're like laughing about it. Like they're like, yeah, it was great. He kidnapped me and now we're married. And like, that was 40 years ago. And
that really solves the incel problem, doesn't it?
What's like that thing in Japan? Like apparently up until like the early mid 20th century, in Japan, the thing you did as a male is that you would sneak into the house or room of the woman you wanted to court and have sex with her in the dark.
You mean rape?
And that's how.
What the hell?
How very
Japan is fucked up, man.
How very Eurocentric of you.
Yeah.
This is what the thing with all this is just all I'm saying is that what your civilization is deeply tied to this. You can see it through history if you read enough different things. And if you let it go or change it or switch it up, and this is part of the problem with all of it, is I'm a bit black-pilled on this in the sense of it's how it goes, just like a body ages, just like a human ages, just like a religion ages and turns from something like Nietzsche called it from the beginning, like a fiery beginning, to becoming an old man and the philosopher. And that's when it's dying, and it's dying its death. Bill Reel was talking about it today with talking about should be pro suicide because his mom was dying and we're trying to hold on to something that you can't hold on to. It's the way it's going to go. It's going to die. But that's actually exactly what Spengler said when he was talking about civilizations. One of the things he talks about, he brings up, he says this: our duty is to hold on to the lost position without hope, without rescue, like that Roman soldier whose bones were found in front of a door in Pompeii, who during the eruption of Vesuvius died at his post because they forgot to relieve him. That is greatness. And what it's saying is like, we're going to hold to some sort of ideal or whatever, but it's lost. It's lost. Like the change has already happened. It's already over. It's already done. The civilization's already fundamentally changed, and it's going to change. And now we just get to watch and see what happens and hope we're not part of the fallout of all that.
You're a fucking bummer.
You know, one of the things that we didn't get to it in the Mary Harrington and John, Pajot video, but where he kind of goes later on and says the things that like have staying power are the things that you, how did he say it, Chris? Where they're like, I don't know if it's like they're not just forgotten, but they're like kind of deeply ingrained through
the pattern and memory, and they come back.
Pattern of memory. Yeah, so it's like the whole concept of getting memory hold. It's like, that's why memes are. That's why the left can't meme, and he kind of points at that too. But
yeah, watch that whole episode. It's good. He also talks about that you're not going to be politically viable unless the things that you say can be put to a bass beat. And if you're not able to meme like the way Trump does when he talks, like if you're Vivek Ramaswamy and you're just too smart and explain everything out, you can't win. You got to have it. Like so that the things that you can say are infinitely usable as memes. Marty sent me something she wants me to play for. She said it's funny. Hold on a second. Anyone want to come on? If somebody else wants to come challenge Jacob, he's coming back. Jared posted the
Jacob challenge.
I didn't.
I'm back, gentlemen.
I'd messaged Jim Bennett to come back, but he's blocked all of us.
No, he didn't block me. I had it in the Lobsters group, and I tagged him in it. And he's.
You know that story, Jacob, of how I got blocked by Jim Bennett?
No, tell me it.
Because he popped up onto Latter-day Lobsters. He said, I joined this group. Somebody messaged it to me. I just found out who Jordan Peterson was, and I think he's kind of a weenie. So I said, well, I just found out who you are, and I think you're kind of a weenie. Blocked.
So this is kind of one of the point of blue church versus whatever the old church is, or conservative versus new whatever thing, is you're able to. So Jim got very, very offended when you would bring up to him that you think he's causing harm to the church and causing people to leave the church. But his whole entire premise is that everybody else is causing harm to the church and causing people to leave the church. And there's this whole deal is that if you're somebody who's fighting for the oppressed people, you're allowed to be whatever terrible jerk you want to be. Like, nobody's ever going to pull up Dan McClellan or Jim Bennett saying terrible, horrible things because their mama bear is fighting for the oppressed or something like that. And it's one of just the fundamental differences. No matter what, where the locus of control, they view the locus of control of the person who you're defending, and they say, well, they can defend themselves, but we're defending helpless people who are just helpless little babies who let me see what this
brave warriors.
Let's see what this joke is here.
I can't find the zipper.
Oh, there is no zipper. I made the stress and my mom sewed it in.
Maybe I could try abdominal area here. Is that okay?
Yes, you have my permission.
Line of the...
Maybe, because maybe you could just rip it.
I just want to make sure you're feeling safe.
No. I feel so safe. And I've never felt more safe.
Well, do I have your permission?
Just be a man and rip it off.
Now I'm feeling very unsafe.
I think I'm gonna go get I'll see front. This guy's a seam ripper.
You're on the internet.
No, I mean, Louis C.K. made a whole joke about it, which apparently has been scrubbed from the internet. But it happened to me. That exact thing happened to me, where there was this girl that was coming around and really hanging on to me, and she's like, I want to stay here tonight, and she's gonna get down to her underwear and get in bed with me. And I was like, okay. And I tried to make a move, and she'd push my hand away. And then try to make a move, she'd push my hand away, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what's going on here. I'm going to bed. And I didn't find out until years later when I was talking to her friend. And this came, I think the Louis C.K. bit came up.
That Louis C.K. bit's great. He
but
said,
that's the thing is she this thing I found out. The reason I never got with that girl is she wanted me to rape her, and I wasn't gonna do it.
He said, "Are you nuts? You want me to
wrong?"
He said, "You want me to rape you on the off chance that you're into that shit?"
Yeah, and that's the thing. And that's the other thing is about this the Kazakh babushkas. Because the guy that's the host of this show, his traveling companion is, I think it's his girlfriend, but it's a young, attractive Belarusian girl. But he's joking. He's like, oh, would you like that to be kidnapped? And she's joking, but you can tell she's not entirely joking. But she's like, yeah, a strong, masculine Kazakh on a horseback just grabs me and makes me his. Yeah, that sounds appealing to me. And and this is the big lie of feminism, is that women don't feel like this.
You guys picked a really great story to tell right when my wife is in the room standing next to me.
I was wondering what was going on.
Good work, guys.
Did you get married in the Kazakh faction? Is that how they do it in the Sparks?
Christopher brings up a point that I think was kind of one of the points that should have been brought up in the gym thing, is that he says, we kind of got to alter the church because it's going to keep the people in the church. But I can't remember the podcast. It is somebody who actually got into some of those Jana Reese numbers or whatever. They said that if people go giving into these, demanding these changes or whatever, that even if you change for them, they still end up leaving the church. It's not going to save them. They have data on that.
So I was actually that was the thing I was going to bring up that Jim Bennett brought up, is he said, I want there to be a church around later. And that kind of feels like Chris's whole thing where you see the bones of the guard who didn't leave his post or whatever. That feels like if you believe that the church is true, then you shouldn't change the truth just to keep the church around, because then you don't really have the church anymore, right? So the church should choose to die rather than yield, right? Wouldn't that kind of be the ideal? But Jim is more saying, no, we should yield and just give
the church isn't anything if it doesn't have any actual definitions that it stands on. If everything changes all the time, then it's then it isn't anything. That's the thing. When something just can change constantly,
the salt loses its savor.
It should just change slowly and with lawyers' approval.
So, do you think, Jim, when you were talking to Jim Bennett, that he made any valid point there about how the church has changed?
Go ahead.
Don't you think the church of like Joseph Smith, 1830 church is way different than 2023 church? Like it does
You could drink
gradually
coffee and
change over
smoke
time.
cigars at 1830.
What if it stayed the same though? I mean,
Then we'd all
Jim
be
brought
drinking and smoking
Um,
cigars.
how
but
many
it's-
people would
but
really
it-
be in the church still if it stayed exactly the same as it was?
Cigars and alcohol,
it
guys.
proves-
Yes.
But the problem is that it proves too much. Because if it truly changes as much as Jim says, then it's not true. Because, and you guys would all be like, yeah, exactly. but that's the whole thing, is that I actually am hoping in the not too long future to make a video on that subject of change in the church, because I think that there's an understanding of what can change, what can't. And my biggest contention is that there have only been two really significant changes in the church. One is polygamy, and the other is blacks in the priesthood. Those were significant changes. But again, we have a whole long discussion about both of those. But that, if I were to answer your question, that would be the strongest point that he brings up. And because the church has made changes. The question is what have they made changes to? Why did they make those changes? And yeah, that's again, it's a whole subject. I'm planning on making a video on it.
Classify them walking more away from the Trinity in Joseph Smith's time as a change, or I don't know as much about that, so I don't know if that's a.
I don't think that
I mean,
that's
like, this is a thing. Like, I mean, this is part of why I'm not Mormon anymore, is that I don't think there's any answer to this that doesn't just lead to contradictions. But that's a challenge that John Larson laid down a long time ago in his Mormon expression days. And he's laid it down as a challenge, which is there isn't a doctrine in the church that hasn't been messed with at some point.
And this was
And I think
pre-mental
he's basically
breakdown,
right
John.
that- yeah, this is a long time ago, John, not recent John.
So
But
you have
like,
to-
because
I
I
would-
mean, I don't know. For example, like I was talking about alcohol and cigars, but like I remember when I was a kid and I read the diary of my great-great-grandpa who crossed the plains twice. That's a fun story. You might like to know why that happened. But like in his diary, he's making his like packing list for crossing the plains. And it's like 6 pounds of coffee, 4 boxes of cigars. And I read this when I was, a kid. And I'm like, Dad, what's this about? And my dad's like, oh, it used to be okay to drink coffee and smoke cigars. I'm like, it did? And then he told me about how it all changed. Like, and I got older. I'm like, oh, when did it change? Oh, about the time of Prohibition. Go figure, All right.
But I don't. Is that stuff? The marriage one seems way too core to me. Like I can see.
Yeah,
changing
no,
all
that,
sorts of,
that one, yeah, like
The
that
word of
one
wisdom
where,
doesn't seem like
the
that big of
entire,
a deal
like,
to me because Jesus drank wine, and that was so
Yeah.
that it didn't
Well,
bother me
here's,
that the
like-
word of wisdom changed.
Can you smoke cigars as an exalted, resurrected being? I think you can.
These are the kind of questions you're going to
Quaker
get as a
claims
seminary
that-
teachers, by the way.
Quaker
It's
claims that
all
people are getting
about-
temple recommends drinking coffee nowadays. Who knows if that's true? or
Yeah,
not.
that
it's
midnight
true.
Mormon. When I left the church, masturbation
I'm sure
was
that there's
still
local
wrong.
leaders. The problem is we got local leaders that are. I'm convinced that there's a significant level of corruption amongst the mid-level management of the church.
Oh yeah.
Whoa.
Like go to Deseret Book.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I was at Deseret Book, and the person in Gilbert, Arizona, went to the Deseret Book, and the lady actually came to talk to them about. I was legitimately going to ask about Papa Osler's book, and I was going to point out some of the material that was a little questionable in there, like basically affirming that men are actually women if they say that they're women. And when I went up to ask someone, like, oh, let me get a manager, and the manager came out, and the manager had a rainbow pin on. And I was like, I just had I found out that, we've abandoned the Boy Scouts, but we now have committees at the stake level for helping others better understand LGBTQ people. Now, ostensibly, that doesn't sound like a big problem, but I'm kind of wondering, let's get into the details on that. Kind of sounds like a DEI committee that's going around telling anyone who is saying, hey, marriage is only between a man and a woman, that's hateful and that we need to like, be more tolerant and kind and inclusive. And so there are things going on in the mid-level management of the church that I'm fully very concerned about. And I actually potentially have a video that I'm a little nervous even to release because I'm generally not like, I don't criticize the church much. And I don't have a lot to criticize the church on when it comes to our teachings and our doctrines. But when I see some of the things that are going on within the institutional structure of the church, there's no doubt there are things that I'm deeply concerned about. And a lot of regular Orthodox faithful members are becoming deeply concerned about.
What was that on Thoughtful Faith? There's that guy who said he was assigned to some sort of stake LGBTQ reach out committee or something?
No, that I found that's in multiple stakes, and he specifically, that guy actually was in my he was in my bishopric back in the day when I was in Arizona, and good guy, really like him, but he's part of a committee that he specifically said that the committee's job is to help others better understand LGBTQ people. And I don't know about you guys, but code words like better understand people.
Yeah.
What
are we not getting here,
Yeah, that was my question. I asked that. I said, what exactly is it that we don't understand here? Now, granted, I can, in all fairness, there are members out there that are still believe like if you're gay, you chose it and you're basically like evil just for saying that you feel attracted to the same sex. Like those people
you had a bad relationship with your father. Have you heard that one, Jacob? I know you have. I can tell that you've listened to a lot of Christian apologetics, and so have I. And that was one, like, I used to listen to hours of them saying, like, well, the only reason anybody's gay is because they had a bad relationship with their father, like, as if that holds up.
No, that's why people have blue hair.
That's right.
So regardless, like, we have, like, we just had Charlie Bird, who's a published author at Deseret Book, just proposed to his boyfriend. And I asked the question in my group, I asked, is there going to be a disciplinary council? I'm sorry, not a disciplinary, a membership council.
The court of love.
Are you kidding me? There wasn't a disciplinary council for Tyler Glenn. If he got away with it. What?
For Jimmy Snow. Jimmy Snow runs an atheist podcast crapping all over every religion on earth. And he said he hasn't had any sort of discipline or a membership council. And the same goes for Blair Ostler. Blair Ostler wrote a book advocating openly and aggressively for queer polygamy. It's like, you guys.
I think Aaron Ra.
I don't know, though. Like,
Aaron Ra?
Yeah.
He's doing what?
He has an interview on Stephen Pinnaker's channel.
But Aaron Ra wasn't Mormon, was he?
He was Mormon as a child, but like
Aaron Ra was?
even by his,
I didn't know
Aaron
that.
Ra was. But like the way he describes it is that his family were Jack Mormons. Like they drank and they smoked and they swore and they were Mormons. And like he got baptized because that's what they did. But that's what he says.
Is it if you never have membership
they weren't real
councils,
true Mormons? Is that what you're saying?
Right.
What was that?
You'd have to ask them.
Just kidding.
I'm just saying, like that's his story. His story, like he didn't go to a lot of church, like, but it was a thing, like you said, like his family were. That's the way he described it, as I recall it. His family were basic run-of-the-mill Jack Mormons in Texas. Like the way he describes it, like they were basically trailer trash Mormons in Texas, and they were Mormon because they were Mormon, and that's why they were Mormon, and it didn't go any deeper than that.
I had no idea. And I listened to a bunch of Aaron Ra, but that guy's atheism plus.
Yeah, he went down the plus road.
But yeah, the stuff's weird out there, man.
But Jacob just said something that. Oh yeah, that's because this is the thing is like when the way you're talking about how the church just seems to be making decisions based on contingency and not on doctrine. I got to tell you, like that was a big part of how I lost my faith. Was that like I went on my mission, and I realized, like, just looking around at the mission office and the way everything worked, it was like I was struggling to see how it was any different from any other school or business or anything else I'd ever been a part of, where it's like you guys are just like basically like the lawyers are making the decisions. You know, it's not coming from anywhere else.
I would say I've had a very different maybe experience than that, but regardless, I think what's going on in the church right now is, and the reason I wanted to have the discussion with Jim Bennett was because I think it typifies the divide currently in the active membership of the church right now. And so you can imagine that you're Russell M. Nelson and you're standing in between Jacob Hansen and Jim Bennett. Now, President Nelson and the Quorum of the 12, so far as I can tell, what they're thinking is, okay, how do we keep these two people in the boat, keeping their covenants and trying to follow the Lord?
And rowing in unison.
Exactly. He doesn't.
A miracle would do it.
You're exactly right, Marty. And that's what's going on in the church right now. The real, as we face this divide in the church, what I believe is going on. So I remember when they gave the talk on racism recently. They also gave a talk on inclusion recently. And as I listened to those talks in General Conference, what I realized was that there was nothing in those talks that I disagreed with. I mean that, like, I'm the kind of guy who will say if I disagree with something that's been said by a church leader.
What?
And so I listened. They were doctrinally sound. But what I realized is, okay, we're getting this talk about racism at a time when I think Mormons are probably about the least racist people in this country. Okay. And in the history, like if you'd given that talk in 1960, that would have been more appropriate. But he gave it now. So the question is why? Well, the way I see it is that what the president of the church and the Quorum of the 12, so far as I can tell, they're looking at the situation. They said, look, these people like Jim Bennett and others, their hearts are in the right place. They want to help people. They do that. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about issues that are important to them, but we're going to do it in a way that's true. You're going to talk about inclusion. We're going to talk about the Lord's version of inclusion. You're going to talk about anti-racism. I'm going to give you the Lord's version of anti-racism. And the idea is to hopefully kind of throw a bone to those people and have them going, yeah, like, listen to the brethren. They're talking about racism or they're talking about inclusion, but they're doing it in a way that is consistent with what the gospel teaches. And so I think that's their way of trying to keep the Jim Bennetts and the Jackson Washburns and the others in the church who are ideologically different to basically reach out to them.
Should they though?
Yeah,
And I even wonder that for them too. Like part of my whole point is like Jackson, like the water's perfectly fine outside of the church.
Yeah.
Go somewhere else for you, not for the church, for you. If it's really hurting you or something like that.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. Is like,
but I don't know what you think about that. I mean, I know that you might be quicker saying we should move them out if they think that way. I know most Mormons are supposed to say they got to stay in, but our whole point is like, if it's not, like, you can take it from the ex-Mormon point of view. If it's not working for you, don't change it. You go for you.
How much heterodox wiggle room?
But that's Flip's question that he asked on Thoughtful Saints. He asked, is it okay to say, Jackson, you should go somewhere else?
Yeah, that's kind of what part of what I was getting at. Is like, yeah, is it okay for Jackson to go?
I don't think a Latter-day Saint should ever be telling people to leave.
No. That's not the same thing. But like, if Jackson were to announce, like, look, it's not for me. It doesn't suit my needs. I don't believe in it. I'm going. Should he just go, or should you try to convince him to stay in spite of his reservations?
I think at some point a person, I will never tell a person to walk away from their covenants. I'll always call them to repent, to try harder, to place their faith. But I will also tell them that I will leave it to priesthood key holders that if a person is working against the faith, that they should that's up to them to make the call if that person needs to be removed from the church. And I do think
that's still not what we're getting at, though. It's like, because if Jackson, because like obviously Jackson is a neo-Marxist entryist, and he wants the power that he sees the church as having, and so he just wants to change it to suit him so that he can be in charge. But let's say that that's not the case, and he's just genuinely conflicted about his faith. Should we just let him go? If he wants to go, should we just let him go?
It's okay that you left.
I know it's okay. You know how I know it's okay that I left? Nobody tried to keep me in when I left. Everyone was like,
well, see, that's the thing. That's the whole agency issue, like with the war in heaven and that kind of thing. Like, that's what I chalk it back to. It's like, that's it. You got your choice,
Yeah.
But I also think beyond choice is like, if it's as harmful.
I want every single one of you to be baptized in the church, make temple covenants, and keep those covenants. And I make no reservation about that.
Doing the ideal of it.
Because I love all of you, and because I truly believe that is the best path for all of you to take in order to come into right relationship with God. And as a Latter-day Saint, I never want anyone to walk away from that, but I have to also protect people within the church if those within the church are actually leading people out of it.
Jacob's better than
but
me.
if we take Jackson's claim or whoever's claim that it's harmful and it's also harmful, you say, okay, if it's harmful for you, get away from what harms you.
Don't
let's go away from the Jackson model and talk about the Chris, Flip, Jared, Marty model, where we really don't have a beef with the church. We just don't believe it. Like, how does a person like that?
The is and the ought.
If I just don't believe it and I don't feel good teaching my kids about stuff that I don't
think you invited me back to church and I gave an answer that was kind of flippant but also entirely honest, which is like, the reason I don't go to church is because it's boring and I don't believe in it. That's why I don't go to church. Those are all the reasons I don't go to church. I see lots of good things about church. I totally understand why lots of people go to church.
Let me flip this the whole other direction. I don't like that Jim Bennett and Jackson join and push politically, but I don't think I should join politically either.
Yeah,
like, I don't know. I'm pretty ready to just go back to church to just
like if I join, it should be because I believe the is of it. It should not be. I shouldn't be there as a political member either.
Yeah.
Well, no, I just want to go to church, but I feel guilty because I feel like a wolf in sheep's clothing, and I feel like that is wrong to do that. So I won't do that. I participate at the level that I can. I'm not willing to go through the temple recommend questions and answer them metaphorically. I'm just not willing to do it because I don't think that's what the church means by them.
I agree. I don't think anyone should be dishonest. My call to the non-believer, the person who has lost their faith, is to have the conversation about faith and to try and find faith. There's Pascal has this thing, I think it was Pascal who said it, who said, there are those who seek God because they know him, or seek God with all their heart because they know him. And there are people who seek God with all their heart because they don't know him. Well, so my word to the non-believer is to continue to seek truth, to continue to seek God, to continue the conversation, because ultimately, and maybe you'll never get there, but in my mind, there's no better pursuit. Like, what better pursuit is there than to pursue the highest of ideals?
Well, I mean, I know I already used the expression "lose my faith" in this conversation, but I was using it as an expression. But I also have a flippant answer to that, which is that I didn't lose my faith. It's exactly where I left it. I know right where it is. It's not lost. It's not a thing that I wonder about, that I'm not sure about. It's not like my keys that I'm looking for. I know, like, I don't have faith anymore. I didn't lose it. It's not under the couch where I can't reach it. I no longer accept faith to be a reliable epistemic. That's why I'm not Mormon.
Yeah, I would probably agree. The way you define faith and the way a lot of people define faith, it's a terrible epistemic. And
how do I define faith? How do I define faith?
Believing in things without evidence.
You mean the way the church defines faith?
Without sufficient evidence for it?
No. Look, just go to the lds.church.com, whatever the official site is, I did this already in your group.
They have a dictionary.
And they have a dictionary. They have a glossary. There's an entry under faith. Going off of that definition, that's my definition of faith. That's the one that I was raised with. That's the one I had. That's the one I don't have anymore. It's not any other definition. Let's go there. Let's go.
Well, no, mine's a bit different than that in the sense of like,
I ascribe to a model of faith that I think the best definition, I really like, William Lane Craig has a good definition of it. It's essentially placing your trust in the best available option. It's a placement of trust. It isn't even about cognitive belief.
That's what I was going to say too.
Yeah, and that's actually, I was willing to participate at church until
Am I sharing?
That
Is
trust
this sharing?
to the organization.
what,
That's wrong.
what were you saying, Marty?
Sorry.
Well, no, that's what I was saying, that trust. Because as I've looked back, I was like, I lost my belief really gradually, and it's hard to pinpoint exactly when I lost belief and like literal belief. It was all really gradual. And then, but I lost my trust because I naively gave a lot of answers to the leadership of the church, right? And then I realized that's not a good thing to do. And I understand people can stay and not do that, but once that was broken, it's like I have no reason to go. I don't have reason to go back. It's like I feel like the church is like my ex-spouse. I have no reason to go back to that spouse. I am curious about dating other churches, though.
Well, I'm more curious about if you believe. Do you believe in like? You got to start from the beginning.
Are you polyreligious?
God?
Are you polyreligious, Marty?
What?
Or
Are you polyreligious?
Are you faith fluid? Are you one day you're a Confucian, the next day you're a Muslim?
You've got an open faith. You've got an open faith relationship.
Just don't go on the ayahuasca retreat.
I'm just a-religious.
Jacob, you're talking to a lot of people that have done a lot of powerful psychedelic drugs.
That's fine. Just please don't go online telling everyone about how purging into buckets was the greatest experience of your life, and then 2 episodes later lecture us about how the temple is weird.
Okay, hang on a second.
Look,
What's your IQ?
The universe
I
is
like
all
the
one.
temple,
It's one
and
universe,
I liked
it's one.
I liked the temple, and I liked
I'm
powerful
sorry,
psychedelic
Jacob,
drugs that made me puke.
Jacob, did you take an IQ test when you were in like the 5th grade and get a 142?
What is even your IQ?
I don't think you did.
I don't know.
I don't think you did. Well, because Bill Reel has a 142 IQ, so I think you can just back off.
Oh wow.
That's why my name on here is 146 IQ.
If you were, I don't know. I've never had an IQ test, and I hope I never have one, because that's a number I just don't want to know.
Dude, I had one on Facebook. Find out that I'm actually like 1,004.
Marty, you need to talk to Bill and get him to agree to actually do a formal debate.
Oh, that's right. Marty
can do that. Bill has been dogging me and ducking me. And
I'd actually like
I'm
to
a
know.
bad person.
I'd like to know the background between how you guys even did the ones that you did. I was really impressed. Bravo. That is in the Marty spirit.
He rejoined Thoughtful Faith Facebook, and then he just
we originally had a conversation about we had tried to set something up a long time ago, and Bill basically said, here's what I want to do. Here's a list of every single problem in church history, and I want you to sit there, and I'm going to ask you questions about it and see if you can defend it. It's like, oh, well, I've done formal debates. I've done formal debates before, and there's a round called cross-examination. And cross-examination is the hardest round in a debate. Anyone who does it, it's the scariest round because you get to be grilled by another person. He basically wanted to do a cross-examination round of a debate where he got to do the cross-examination for 2 hours, and then we ended the episode.
I believe you.
Nope.
That makes
that's a dumb idea.
I feel the same way. Like he had, he put out his stipulation when he first got in touch with Midnight Mormons, that very first debate. And he was like, this is simple. This is all I ask, and nobody will come. And it's like, yeah. Why would they?
Yeah, the big list of
I want to talk about all my strongest points, and we're not going to talk about any of your strongest points. But you were able to get him in a room and talk about morality, which I think is one of the strongest points of theism. So he gave you that.
I was actually very glad about that. We did have a conversation about it, but I genuinely, like, some people are like, oh, you were kind of like rough or whatever, and I'm kind of like, you guys, you have no idea how nice I was. There were so many things he said that I could have just torn into, but I didn't, because I agreed in good faith. I said, we're going to have a conversation. We're going to explore the nature of our differences, and anyone who watches that conversation will go back. And I asked some challenging questions, but it was very much, the idea was to try and understand the nature of morality, because we both, as human beings, it's an issue we both have to sort out. So it's a good conversation it's a good topic for a conversation where both sides can kind of present what they think about it and kind of explore it. And that's what we tried to do. The problem is when you get into issues where you just straight up disagree on a really deep, fundamental, and even passionate level, it's like the format has to change. You're not going to be able to avoid debate. So what you do is that you structure it so that everyone gets a chance to talk. You're not talking over each other. You both get the chance to ask questions. You have a balanced format. And the idea is you make your case, not to each other, but to the audience, as to why you think your point of view is stronger. And I even invited him recently to have one about, he was going about how church leaders are so untrustworthy and everything. I wanted to have a debate about that. And he still isn't coming around to do it.
So,
There is the other side of it, though, because and I'm a big fan of debates. I've enjoyed a lot of debates, but it is also very much a game. And
you can be good at the game and not be right.
You can be good at the game and still be wrong.
That's true.
That's a big issue with debates.
Well, and one thing with a debate, one thing that can help with that, and I'd be willing to do this with Bill, debates require you to think on your feet. And that's very hard, especially that's why cross-examinations are so tricky, because you got to come with the answers on the fly. Another structure of debate you can do is you can do a video submission debate. So you both make your opening statements. We both submit them to Marty. Marty publishes the opening statements. We get to watch those. Then we get a week to prepare our rebuttals in an 8-minute video. And then you get to really think about it, prep your sources, put together your video presentation, and then we submit our rebuttals. And then the only time we'd have to actually be together is in a cross-examination. Then you would have to think on your feet if you wanted to do that. But you basically make a debate where it is you have a lot of time to think about and to put together your arguments for the debate.
You know, Jacob, I told Hayden this when he came on. Like, we didn't have a formal debate, but Hayden came on and talked to me. And you and I have talked about having
Marty had Hayden. I got to watch it already, but
Jacob, did I tell you? I tell everybody I have a secret weapon, a secret strategy that I use to not lose any argument. And it's not a secret because I tell everybody about it up front. Yeah, always punt. No.
Yeah.
But my secret strategy to not lose an argument. Now, it's no guarantee that I win any argument, but as long as you apply this entirely and faithfully, you can never lose an argument. And my strategy is this: never pretend to know something that you don't know.
Amen.
As long as you do that, you're safe.
Yeah, but then you can go the whole Plato route, and we don't even know what a chair is, man.
That's right. I forgot. I don't even know what a chair is. What does okay even mean, you guys? It's so vague. I'm so happy, Jacob, that you just answered that directly with the orthodox
just answer back like, "Stop sea-lioning me! Stop sea-lioning me! You're sea-lioning me with these questions."
Did you watch that all go down, Jacob? I'm just wondering if you watched that go down, because there was no ulterior motive. I just was the reason I asked those questions. I asked, "Is it okay to not be Mormon? Is it okay to leave the church?" And the reason I asked that is because we have discussed on this show before that if they would listen to us, we would like to ask John DeLynn and Nuance O and Sam and Tanner, is it okay to be Mormon? Is it okay with you if people are Mormon? Because we get the impression that it's not. So I just figured, because a lot of people in your group talk about that stuff. And it was fascinating to me because, a few people were like you, were like, no. You gave the faithful answers. No, God wants you to have blessings. Fucking take the blessings. But then there was a handful of people who were like, what does okay mean? And so there's two groups of the what does okay mean people. They're like, well, what do you mean by okay? And I told everybody the exact same thing. The general meaning of okay. And some people went, all right, and they answered the question. But then there was a subset of sophists that were like, what does that even mean? It has no meaning. And it's just like, oh my God, guys. Like,
if we take little pieces of the okay away.
I'm a big believer in having people define terms if you're not sure, things aren't clear, and we need to define terms. But in this environment of constantly blurring lines that everyone always does, no one ever gives a straight answer. That's one thing that I really enjoy doing, and it surprises people when I just look you in the face and I'm like, yeah, that's wrong. It's immoral.
I run into that problem a lot where I just answer questions directly and simply, and I'm willing to elaborate. But that thing's like, you were one of the only people who just said no, and you offered like, and I have no problem with somebody saying like, well, in this case, if we say okay means this, then that, and that. Like, I'm fine with those answers because they're answers. But like, because the thing is like, I mean, I'm not a Mormon anymore. I'm not faithful. I don't believe, but I can still put myself in that headspace. And if I remember anything from church, it's that you should be Mormon. Like, that's what God wants.
And that is a very admirable trait that a lot of people don't have, is you have to understand what a person is arguing. You have to understand the presuppositions that they bring to the table. You have to basically grant where they're coming from here, right?
Yeah.
And in fact, that was one of the things in my conversation with Bill, and some people got real upset about it, but the idea is there are some topics in the church that I agree with Bill on if you reject sort of the Christian side of the equation, right? Like, of course Mormonism is absurd but if you were to grant certain other premises, like Jesus, let's just say, for the sake of argument, like Jesus Christ really rose from the dead, the New Testament is fundamentally true in what it says. That means God can speak to you. That means there is a Holy Spirit that can witness the truth. That means that there have been prophets and apostles on the earth. That means all sorts of other things. Now, you can still have the argument, like other Christians do, against our faith and bring all that to the table. But you have to admit, it changes the dynamic when you bring to the table, like, you're approaching it from the lens of a Christian rather than from the lens of an atheist.
If magic can happen, all the magic can happen. You know?
So here's the problem, though. Most theists act like secular people, except for when their religion comes up. Like, it's like, I don't know.
What do you mean by religious people?
Just
old
like
saying
you do.
that
Like,
you're an
you make a lot of
atheist for every god
invocations.
except for your own.
You make a lot of invocations to, you know, science and logic and reason,
Right.
and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Until you get to your presuppositions when you say like, well, no, I just believe this, which is why I always bring up my favorite Christopher Hitchens quote of all is, do yourself the favor and say it's faith. Because as soon as you say, I believe this because of faith, I can't touch it. That's your faith.
No, I totally disagree.
No, this is part of the empirical universe that you and I both inhabit. Well, then I get to pick your shit apart forever.
Well, good. Then do it.
But at the same time,
my
too,
thing is that my beliefs, and I can't stand it when Latter-day Saints do this, and when other religious people do it, is just the appeal to blind faith. Which, by the way, the type of faith you're describing is not a virtue.
Faith. Am I sharing the screen on the faith?
Yeah, I showed it already. Yeah.
But because the top of the definition, the Apostle Paul taught that faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen.
Is assurance evidence?
Evidence.
I mean,
I was listening. You should watch this video by Emerson. That Emerson
is
guy.
Assurance evidence.
If ye have faith, ye hope for things which are not seen, which are true. Faith is a principle of action and power. Whenever you work toward a worthy goal, you exercise faith. You show your hope for something you cannot yet see. I think that's what faith means.
I think you get to the bottom of anybody's belief and they have to rely on faith at some point, though, right?
Oh, yeah.
So even when you're reading the scripture, it's like, well, which things should I hope for that I can't know? Like, it doesn't answer that question in that scripture.
Faith, here's the way to define it. Faith is where you place your bet. Faith is where you're placing your bet. But the question is, are you just placing your bet arbitrarily, or are you basing it on something?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the assurance that he's talking about is the assurance of the Holy Spirit. There is something that has assured you that something is true, and that is a form of evidence. And I would say in my collective witness model, I believe that the Spirit of the Lord is not just warm and fuzzies. It is manifest through all of the different tools that the Lord has given us to be able to detect truth, including the scientific method. And so I utilize that epistemological structure to and model to explore reality, to try and figure out what is the nature of reality. I have a good video on Monday.
It's all built on a presupposition on the existence that God exists, and that
no, I don't presuppose God's existence. I don't.
I think you do.
Nope. I've arrived at the existence of God based on evidence such as
the word
the fine-tuning of the universe.
Where do you
that's terrible. That's garbage.
Fine-tuning.
All right, let's debate it.
So he wants to have that debate with you, but this is one of the deals about epistemology that a lot of atheists are pretty bad with, in the sense of the concept of evidence is a lot more lenient inside of epistemology than people understand.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm also curious about your beef with. I think the fine-tuning argument is probably the best one that the theists have.
Well, it's fairly. Here's the basics of it. There's only two possibilities for something's existence. Either it was designed, or it exists because of randomness. Like
it's a false dichotomy.
What's the third alternative?
Yeah. I don't have to provide a third alternative. You have to establish that those are the two possibilities.
You claim that it was a false dichotomy, then there has to be.
I know, but I don't have to provide a third alternative. You have to prove that those are
Flip has faith
two options
in the third alternative.
But you made a claim. You made a positive claim.
Under epistemological,
I'm asking you to explain why you think that it's a false dichotomy.
No. Again, like, this is a reversal of the burden of proof. We can play this game with 10 million different things. You have to establish that it's an either or. Like, I always bring it up, and everybody always gets annoyed at me, but the universe farting unicorn. That's my stupid throwaway answer to all of those. What's the third option? It was the universe farting unicorn. The Big Bang was a product of the universe farting unicorn.
Actual empirical experience that
anything you say about God, I can say about the universe farting unicorn. Literally any claim you make about God, I can apply to the universe farting unicorn and just say he's a universe farting unicorn and he's not God.
Yeah,
and it works exactly as effectively.
Here's another reason it's not convincing. I could say, in our puny little brains, we could be arguing about whether unicorns farted or didn't fart.
No, right? He's a singular magical unicorn.
No, but it doesn't make any sense to say this or this when we don't know anything. Like,
exactly.
But this is the deal, though, is that epistemologically speaking.
Yeah, but there's something.
Epistemologically thinking, it doesn't have to be smoking gun evidence. It's still evidence, epistemologically speaking. Like,
what I'm saying,
they can make an argument that it's evidence. If that makes sense.
You set your terms.
Most atheists think evidence means you have to have the perfect answer right here of a smoking gun, perfect little thing.
No. Like that's because they're logical positivists.
The evidence means that, like, this is a thing that could be put into the side of the category of the thing leads to the conclusion. Like, if I come across a knife in this room, I could say this is evidence that somebody's been murdered here. I have no like, there's no blood on the knife, no nothing. It's just a random knife. I just see a random knife and I make that decision. But the deal is like, it is true, no matter how weak it is or not weak it is, that that's a little bit more than if there was no knife in the room. Does that make sense?
But Chris,
like,
what if Satan put the knife there to make you think someone was murdered?
There's that too. But the truth of it is that it is, epistemologically speaking, it's evidence, and some people can start building off of that evidence what they want it to be.
Okay, but I think if you set your terms broadly enough, Flip, I think that anything would be kind of a dichotomy. I think saying that something is either caused or uncaused is a pretty correct dichotomy. And I do think that when you say that it's a false dichotomy, you're now the one making. No, but what I'm saying is that when you say it's a false dichotomy, you're now the one making a positive claim. So it would be in your best interest if you want to prove that it's a false dichotomy to provide a third, fifth option or whatever.
No, it's like the car was either yellow or blue. That's a false dichotomy. You have to eliminate all other possibilities other than yellow or blue. because
Yeah.
cars come
And the
in
best way
many
to
colors.
do that, like if I say cars are only yellow and blue, and you say that's a false dichotomy, I say prove it. You say, well, some cars are green, and now you've proved it. You've made
No,
your.
but we're talking
positive
about like
claim.
things like the origins of the universe and like
No, I get
were
that,
we
but
created.
what I'm saying is that like because this is the thing that I get into it with atheists a lot is that they do that whole burden of proof thing where they're like you're asking me to prove a negative, and that's true. You can't ask somebody to prove a negative, but you're not making a negative claim.
You can
You're
prove
making a
negative.
positive claim that it's a
You could
false
say that there
dichotomy.
is no. You could say that Jacob does not, or that there is no dog in the other room, and then you could go in the other room and you could prove that there is a dog in the other room.
As long as I don't keep moving the goalposts on what qualifies as a dog being in
Moving the goalpost.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you go down the postmodernist route and nothing has any meanings and words don't have meaning, then you're right. Then we can't communicate.
This is why I
and it
don't
all
debate
falls
people.
apart.
Well, no, but this is the point though, like, because when it comes to God, like God is slippery. Like when God needs to be something firm that we can put our fingers on, then he can be. But when God
isn't
needs to be
falsification
slippery,
proving a
he's slippery too.
negative?
Yeah, you're right. No, that's how we do data.
Well, no, I
we
mean, like,
falsify things.
but this is kind of like this is the like why in American criminal justice there is no innocent. There's only not guilty. People are either proven guilty or not guilty. No one is proven innocent because there's just too many possibilities.
No one is proven anything. There literally is essentially nothing in inductive reasoning.
No, some
that
people can
by
be
definition
exonerated.
can even be 100% epistemologically certain. That's the point of
No,
my
no,
collective
some
witness
things,
video.
some things are like you know, like he was on camera on buying Doritos
that camera,
at a Walmart 600
that
miles away.
You can't be certain because that camera could be given to you by the matrix that you live in, and
Well, again, if you keep
and
adding
you're a brain
layers,
in a vat
sure.
in a simulation.
So this is why when you get into like God arguments, you lose me because I feel like isn't there like a scripture that says you shouldn't define God or something? And I think it's breaking
I have
that.
faith that there's such a scripture, but I don't remember it.
I don't know of any
Jordan
such
Peterson
scripture.
talked about it a little bit, like you shouldn't utter the name or you shouldn't try to define it or something like that. I can't. I'd have to go try
Well, no,
to
this has been a long time. One of my issues with like William Lane Craig types, where it's like if you're trying to drag God into the positive logical positivism realm, then you are undermining faith in God.
You
and
can't.
My understanding was that faith in
logical
God
positivism is not a. He would never drag it into logical positivism. Logical positivism is a belief
William
that the
Lane
only
Craig
truth
does
that
it all the
exists is
time.
scientific truth.
So I was watching some
Craig is not a logical positivist.
Capturing Christianity did some of these
excellent.
logical things about the beginning, like and saying if there's a cause, then there was a creator, right? And he was using all these like mathematical things, and I'm sitting here and watching it, and I'm like, I don't think you know what you're saying here. Like I feel like what happens when you get into this kind of discussion, it's like a bunch of fourth graders trying to talk about calculus. You know what I mean? Like it's just
some
enough
of it isn't that
what we
complicated.
understand.
I don't know nothing from calculus, and I'm out of the fourth grade.
Here's something that you can understand.
Is
here's something you can understand. Something either is caused by an intelligent agent or it wasn't. It was created by random necessity.
Caused or uncaused, okay. But when you throw in intelligent agent, why does it have to be an agent? Why does it have to be intelligent? Couldn't it just be a cause? There's a false dichotomy right there.
No,
because you're
smuggling.
You're smuggling in a
particular
other
option, Flip.
Yeah,
Flip.
You're smuggling in an anthropomorphic.
The other option is not saying cause.
Your life
It's saying
was
that
either intelligently designed or else it was randomly caused. It was either caused by a mind or it was not.
No,
Shakespeare's
not
books,
necessarily.
Shakespeare's works were caused by a mind.
Else?
I mean, shoot, what would I point to that hasn't been caused by a mind right now?
So even if here's the thing, though, Jacob, even if I accept this line of reasoning, and this has always been my issue with William Lane Craig and everybody else who takes this line, because you are saying, oh, this is evidence for my God. And like, I mean, I've made the joke.
No, I'm not making an argument for my God.
Faith. But like, because the thing is, Muslims make the exact same argument.
I'm not making a theological
the exact
claim.
same argument.
I'm not making a claim for about the nature of God right now. I'm not.
No, not the nature of God, but that it had to have been some intelligence, and that intelligence is the creator. The creator is God. Is that not where we're going?
He gave the binary, but I don't see that you showed the third part of that binary. You're saying it's intelligent, or
theology.
The word cause. A cause.
The universe farting unicorn is not intelligent, but creates universes from his glorious gas.
So it's not
that's
intelligent.
The third
that's
option.
the other binary.
That was
that's
the
not
other
a third. That's
option.
the other binary.
Well, it's not nothing either.
It's a cause.
He didn't say nothing. He said it was either caused by something
a cause
intelligent
that wasn't
or not.
thinking, or a cause that was thinking.
Well, okay, but are we short-circuiting to God or not?
So
cause? Does cause mean
this?
God?
How about archaeology? Can archaeology detect if something was intelligently designed or caused by the random forces?
I'm seeing it's a matter of intent. Was it intently done or not?
Well, yeah,
it's actually in fact, I wouldn't even say that, Kevin. I would say it has to do with what's known as specified complexity. Okay, specified complexity matches one pattern that is very unlikely with another pattern. For instance, to go to like the ideal of a house, we have an idea of what a house is. It's an idea that exists in our minds. That is a pattern that exists in our minds. It doesn't actually exist in the physical world. When you find something in the physical world that matches the pattern that we have in our mind for what constitutes a house or a car or a watch or whatever, and you find that, you infer that it was designed. And you infer precisely why is because the only known cause of highly improbable patterns like stones stacked into the shape of the Sistine Chapel is the only known cause of those things is intelligent minds. And so when you find something that exhibits two independent patterns that are unlikely to occur, there's a higher probability that it was caused by a mind. That's why if you saw in the sky clouds that said, clouds have a normal pattern, but if those clouds took up the pattern of the English language that said, flip, my name's God and you better believe in me, you might not even believe it was God that did it, but you would at least rightly infer that it was some intelligent mind caused that to happen. It wasn't just the random wisps of the clouds.
I just
All
read
right,
that
so then how does this apply to the universe as we know it?
The universe takes on a pattern that is, first of all, that's not chaos, and there's no reason.
There's no.
The laws of the
everything we know about the deepest things of the universe are chaotic. There is no
what
pattern.
we know about the universe is that there are laws, there are constants and quantities that did not have to be the way that they are. They emerged from the Big Bang, according to science, in exactly the right way to allow for the existence of us. And the thing is, they didn't have to be that way. You have to ask yourself, why did they come out this way?
According to science, they could have just as easily been anything else. So that doesn't invoke anything other than we happen to land in this one. Like, have you ever heard the
getting human beings out of a one in a
and it's like dealing 5 cards and getting a straight flush.
But so this is what I would have to do. Like, being an atheist, if you want to be honest epistemologically, you have to say, I grant that you can put that in your evidence locker. It's just not good enough evidence for me. But you would have to grant that it's evidence in the sense of what epistemologically can be evident.
But this is the thing, is like, where I always get lost. It's like, okay, the fine tuning sure seems remarkable, but it's that leap from that to a personal, Judeo-Christian God.
That tells you not to drink coffee.
That tells you not to drink coffee. Like that's the thing that that's the thing that like Christopher Hitchens said a long time ago. If I grant all of your premises about fine tuning and whatnot, you still have all of your work ahead of you.
Excellent.
To get to Joseph Smith.
My only goal.
You have everything to get between there and Joseph Smith. My only
goal at the level one conversation, was to get you to consider the fact that perhaps this universe has some sort of intelligent.
No, I never discounted
that we're a part of.
I don't think that that's impossible. I don't know that that's not true.
Well, anything's.
But there's I see no reason to believe in it.
Is it probable?
Like, this is where I get to, like, I mean, I've done it before in Thoughtful Saints and other groups, though, because it's always Christians, because I happen to be in a Christian country with the people that are making this argument, and I do it snarkily, but I think it's effective, where I say, Alhamdulillah, I am Muslim now. You convinced me. There is one God, and it is Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. Like, this is my issue with this line of reasoning, is like,
we're making progress.
Does it get you? It gets you somewhere, but even then, like, all it gets you to is, all it gets you to is some
level 2
kind of intelligent creator.
Troy's point goes Douglas Adams thing that a puddle that
I was going to bring this up before.
He says, "Isn't this puddle perfectly aligned up to me?" and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, isn't this depression in the ground perfectly fit me? You know, and even as I evaporate, it continues to perfectly fit me. Yeah.
No. That's the puddle analogy. I've dealt with that before. So the puddle analogy. The problem is that the puddle analogy only deals with complexity. It doesn't deal with specified complexity. It deals with one pattern.
I don't think that's true.
You can get the proper analogy is if the puddle was the shape of your birthday or your social security.
No. You're missing the point. That's what Douglas Adams was talking about.
There's a difference between complexity and specified complexity.
When we find ourselves on planet Earth, looking out in the stars in the universe and saying, "Gosh, isn't it crazy that this all works out to make us?" Yeah. And it's just like, if a puddle could think, "Oh, isn't it crazy that I perfectly fit this depression that I happen to be in?" Yeah, like, we are the natural consequence of the randomness of that this universe is. It fits exactly as well as anything else.
There was no, because again, a puddle is complex. Just like here's the analogy. There's complexity and then there's specified complexity. So when you're dealing with complexity, you're dealing with, if you had a license plate, for instance, any given license plate, it's like a 1 in a million chance that plate exists, right, for those particular numbers. But it's actually, when you get the license plate, it's not miraculous that you have that license plate, because someone had to get the license plate, right? See what I'm saying? So that's complexity.
Okay.
Here's the difference. Here's where specified complexity is. You need an independent pattern that it has to fit. So if you got a license plate that matched your social security number, and then all of your relatives got license plates that had social security numbers, your social security numbers are the independently given pattern. And when you mix those two together, that's where you get incredibly high levels of improbability, and you rightfully would conclude that someone at the DMV is messing with your family, right? And so,
Jacob, that's how you answered by spending 6 hours in Wendover playing poker. Like, you should really see how a 52-card deck of cards getting dealt out to players makes you believe that somebody's messing with you, but it really is just randomness.
So this is interesting.
But I'd say there's the degree of improbability of the license plate analogy would be. I think what he's saying with the whole specified complexity thing would be that complexity would be is if you see in the sky letters that form like English letters, right? But if you see English letters, that don't spell out your name, just English letters in any random scrambled order or whatever, that'd be complex. And then it'd be, wow, that's really weird that you see 8 different English letters. But if those letters were arranged in a way that made sense in English and spelled out your name, like he was saying, I think that's the specified complexity.
So,
well, okay, but we don't have specified complexity in mere existence or biology or anything like that.
You ought to look into the
we really don't.
The amounts of, that's what the fine-tuning argument says. It says that the universe could have come out in a bajillion different ways, but it came out this way, and it didn't have to.
And you can deal out a deck of cards a bajillion different ways, and you might deal out a straight flush.
And the question is, if you get a not only a straight flush, I'm talking about probabilities you can't even comprehend.
It doesn't matter. Like, the analogy still fits, because, like, if we accept,
you think that the universe,
Jacob, if we accept the multiverse theory, the whole fine-tuning argument,
consciousness, the whole 9 yards.
If we accept the whole premise that the fine-tuning argument rests on, which is that universes can have different physical properties, there is an infinite number of universes that don't have those physical properties.
That's a pure
and therefore have no God.
The multiverse, just so you know, the multiverse is a creation that people made up post hoc to deal with the fine-tuning argument.
Well, then, so then is everything else you're invoking,
So what they said is,
Jacob.
they said
you
this
can't
is
pick
so
and choose
improbable.
which parts of physics
Hold
you
on.
want to
Hold on.
do. And also, by the way, the multiverse theory was
multiverse
invented by
hypothesis.
the Eels guy's dad. Did you know that? This is just a nerdy thing. But you know that
Listen,
band, the Eels?
the
Novocaine for the
multiverse
Soul?
hypothesis, just so everyone knows, was created to try and answer this problem.
No, it
because
wasn't.
the
It was a
scientists
guy,
realized
a
that
physicist
it is
came
so
up with it by looking at
improbable
the
that we
math.
rolled the dice and got this universe. They said, well, there must have been an infinite number of dice rolls. And
No,
so they
not-
just
I think you're making that
they
up.
just made up this theory that there's no evidence for. There's no evidence of the multiverse.
I think you're making that up. That's not how the multiverse theory came about. There's a whole Nova documentary about it, which is what I was talking about. And I'm not just being flippant. I think
there
it's
is
actually genuinely
zero
interesting.
evidence for any other universe besides our own. Just so
Okay,
you
and
know.
there's zero evidence for any god. So okay, like the inferences remain the same, but like you get nowhere. Like again, if we say,
My point is
the
that to
universe
avoid the
itself is the
fine-tuning argument, they have to invent something that's even less probable
Okay,
than God to avoid the concept that there's an
But
intelligent
Jacob,
designer
in
behind the
order
universe.
to explain the fine-tuning argument, you have to invent God. See how
No,
easy that is to do?
No, you don't.
You see
No, you
how
don't.
easy it is just to throw things out and insist they have to be the case?
That's incorrect. Flip.
It's not.
The universe, we know that intelligence exists. We
do?
encounter intelligent causation all the time. So all
Yeah.
we're doing is we're applying what we already know exists.
Okay, what
That
is the evidence of intelligent
agents that
causation in the
cause
universe?
them, and then we're applying the same inferences that we make every day.
Can you imagine the fish thing? Like, isn't it amazing that this body of water, we have water and there's plants and there's bugs we eat? This was clearly created for us. Or is it just a depression in the ground on a cooling planet where chemistry is going crazy?
What is the basis of chemistry if not the physical laws of the universe that just happen to come out in just the way
that.
so that chemistry exists?
You
Do you
just
realize there's
answered your
no
question.
reason that chemistry should exist? There's
Exactly.
no reason that the universe should have formed the way that it did.
Maybe, what if it just happened?
I don't have that much faith.
Okay, but I don't
So,
have faith to say it
let's-
had to have been God.
I'm more
I just say,
interested
I don't know. I
in the
don't
next
know.
step. Are you willing to talk about the next step without Flip conceding?
So if we say
Like
that,
if there is a God,
So the next step is step two.
The next step is that
so
there has to be
so-
an intelligence behind it. That was step
we've
2, right?
we've been engaging more or less at the level 1 conversation. Okay, so once you clear the hurdle to
By
say,
the way,
okay,
these levels are arbitrary inventions that you came up with, but just okay.
all right, I think they're pretty logical followings because I'm.
Well, I know
following
you
the
think that.
logic.
I know you think that, but can
I'm
you
more
prove
concerned
it?
about the probability that this conversation wouldn't have ended up right here.
Yeah,
I kind of thought that this might
Kevin
have
is
been
correct.
where
Yeah,
where
what's
it
the
would have ended up.
multiverse if I didn't jump on, or if Jacob
In a
didn't
multi,
jump on?
how many
Oh,
different?
we would have ended up here anyway.
I believe in predeterminism.
There
now,
are
Kevin,
zero
you're right.
universes where this didn't
This is-
happen.
This was
Yeah, exactly.
predetermined. This was predetermined from when I was 10 years old.
Am I gonna drink
What's
it
pretty
or not?
wild? What's pretty
No, no.
wild though, Flip, if you actually look at some of the logic behind the if there are infinite numbers of universes, that
Jacob,
means
I don't
everything
appreciate
that
when
is
you do
possible.
this. When you do this, if you actually look at stuff. I've
Well, no,
been
no,
in this game
it's
for
an
more than
interesting
20
game.
goddamn years. I've heard it all. I've looked at it all.
I know, Flip.
I just
I'm
don't
just saying there's-
make. I
let's-
just don't make
let's
the
have some
same
fun with it.
assumptions you do. That's
Did you
all.
know that everything that is possible exists if there are an infinite number of universes?
That is
Because
a theory
every-
that people have proposed. I don't know that. Sure,
Okay,
it makes
that's fine.
sense
I'm
if
saying
I accept
that
the presuppositions.
mathematical necessity would say that all possible things exist. So if it is possible that
does
God
it?
exists, that means there is a universe in which God exists.
Okay, there's just a bunch of leaps of logic there.
Okay, so what's the next step? I want to know your next step. This is Jacob's arbitrary next step.
Yeah, what's
Yeah.
the next step? What's after? there
Forrest
has to
says
be a
it's
creation?
silly to try to get to level 2, which I actually think is too. That's actually
Well, that's
the
the thing.
problem with 1,
That's
2, and
that's what
3.
Christopher
Is
Hitchens
that I
says.
agree that if you grant 1, 2, and 3 are easier, it's 1 where we're all stuck at.
Yeah.
That's
No,
fine.
actually, I don't.
No.
I don't agree.
I think that
I have
Christopher
If
Hitchens
you
has
want
it right. That,
if
like,
you want to grant level
step
2,
one is the
go
easy
to level
step.
2.
It's getting
if
from
we grant that there's some sort of a higher power in the universe,
it's
at that
getting
point,
from
go ahead.
an intelligence to whatever's
But
after
let's
that. And then
let's do
there's
the
still
thought. Let's do the thought
here's
thing
a
though.
there's
couple
What
still
Marty's
an
saying, though.
insurmountable
What is level
chasm.
2?
There's still
Yeah.
an insurmountable chasm between there must be an intelligence and Moroni appeared to Joseph Smith in his bedroom. There's so
yeah,
many
I don't think.
steps
Well,
there.
that's not level 2 though. I think Marty's been trying to get out of thought for like an hour.
Okay.
So let her do it.
So what's what's
I
after
have some
level
hangups,
1?
right? I have some hangups, and instead of sharing them, I just want to know what your level 2 is, and if you get to my hangup, then I'll address it at that point.
Oh.
Yeah, so level 2 is at the area of trying to understand the nature of this higher power. This
Personal God, or
intelligent-
just an alien that doesn't care about us.
Universe
an
fighting
alien that
unicorn.
doesn't care about us, or what is the nature of this higher power? What was the purpose of this creation? You at this point you're investigating theism. You're essentially doing theology to try and make a coherent case for understanding whatever this bigger higher power is.
You just smuggled theology into it.
And then does that step take faith? Because I mean, whatever you paint about like a heavenly father that loves you, you could equally say it's an alien that's making you believe that there's a heavenly father that loves you.
It's a natural
Sure.
consequence of breathing the
if a
glorious
person-
gas of the universe farting unicorn. That's what happens. Like when you breathe the glorious gas of the universe
you
farting
have to-
unicorn,
well,
you
well,
get
here's
this
what I do.
impression that everything's
Okay.
bigger than it really is.
Here's the thing. I'm examining this. I'm trying to understand what is the best what model is the best model for understanding this higher power and its relationship to the universe, amongst all of the various options that are out there. And
I have an
including those
answer.
options.
I have an
up
answer
your
for
own-
you, Jacob.
Like Flip's
model-
farting unicorn model.
The best model is the model that makes the fewest assumptions. That's
agree.
the best model.
I agree.
I just
So-
realized, Flip, that you're living up to your name.
So flippant.
He'll sit down and won't shut up. Flippant, he'll sit down and won't shut up.
So
Hey,
so
I am
that's-
seated.
That's the basics of it. But Marty, I think probably the biggest reason I believe in Christianity is because I believe that if I'm looking for some sort of a higher power that is behind this universe, I don't think that there is any other model that I think is as compelling as the Christian model. Now, that doesn't mean that I have 100% epistemic certainty that it's right. I'm saying that among the available options, this is the best I've found so far. If you got a better model, let me know about it. And then within Christianity, the best model that I have found of Christianity is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Would it be fair to say that you kind of jumped quite a few steps there by the basis of believing in a God,
It would be
personal
fair.
God, and then once you believed in a personal God, you didn't think he would abandon people, so therefore there would be a religion. So then you started looking into
but I
it.
would.
I don't even see how you
I
get
would
from
say,
Jacob,
I would say
when-
so
personal
here's the bigger
creator
question.
to
Why am I doing
religion.
any of this? Why do I care about any of this? Why are we seeking the truth at all about the nature of reality in the universe?
Because we're
It's so
here.
that we can live.
Yeah.
It's so that we don't bump, as Jordan Peterson says, into unnecessary walls. I'm a big believer in Pascal's wager in this sense, that you have to place a bet somewhere on how you're going to live your life. Something will occupy the place of, let's call it God, whatever the highest thing is, your ideals. There will be something that occupies that place, okay, no matter what. And so placing my faith in the Christian religion, in Christianity, is a perfectly rational thing to do, because I believe that it is the one that I think best models what I believe the universe actually is, both in terms of the physical and metaphysical natures of reality.
Hey, but Jacob, I
So
asked
this
you
is more
this
than just a
already.
pragmatic belief. It is like metaphysical as well.
Yes, I do believe that the Christian model of metaphysics And I think
So-
if you listen
But
to
you
someone
also
like
believe
Jordan
it has
Jacob,
impli-
I
you
brought
believe
this
it
up
has
before.
implications
Yeah,
for
I think it's
after
great.
this life too.
I brought this
He
up before
shows
though
us.
because it's the easiest thing in the world to find Muslims making the exact same cosmological arguments that you and William Lane Craig, these exact same arguments.
Yeah, because we're all theists.
So, well, hang on.
This is step
How?
one, though, wait a
Where
minute.
do they go wrong? Because they do the exact same thing you're doing, where they're saying, "Let's start with existence, and existence must have a creator," and then they follow all their steps and end up at Allah and Muhammad and the Quran. Where did they go wrong? How did they go wrong?
Well, I would say that the I do not find Islamic theology compelling for a variety of reasons. I find that it's full of internal incoherences far more than Christianity is. It's
like what?
I could go into it. I don't think
again,
that,
but also like
well,
you're
first
also
and
kind
foremost,
of you're avoiding my
do
question
believe-
because, like I
I
said,
do believe
you
one
can
of the
find
witnesses-
Muslims making that's things. The Kalam cosmological argument. William Lane Craig lifted that from Islam.
I know. I'm not. That's a level
Sure,
one.
but that just gets you to
conversation.
step one. That's so.
Yeah,
No, but that's what I'm asking.
Step one and step two
How
here.
do they? Where do they go wrong? Because like you started
Well,
step
what he's
one
saying is that they don't
and
go
end
wrong
up
on
with
step
Joseph
one.
Smith.
Well, for one, they don't believe
start
in the
with step
resurrection
one
of
and
Jesus
end up
Christ.
with Muhammad.
They
How
don't
did
believe
that
in the
happen?
resurrection of Jesus Christ, and I think that's one big problem. I also think the fruits of Islam are pretty clear, and I don't. And they're also the deterministic nature of God in Islam. I think is creates a God that is whose purposes are incomprehensible in my mind.
Everything you just brought up is a minefield because, I mean, it's the simplest thing in the world to come up with all kinds of examples within
Go watch
Mormonism.
the debates between Christian theologians and Muslim theologians.
Believe me,
and
I have,
see
Jacob.
Who
Believe
makes
me,
a
I
more
have.
compelling case?
That's why I'm asking you because again, I've been in this game for more than 20 years now. I've spent a lot of time digging into Islam and Islam Christian debates.
Okay.
They don't get anywhere. My point is, everybody, like Christians and Muslims, get to your level one. Well, everything exists. There must be a creator. And then there's this gigantic chasm where they jump from, well, there must be a creator to, it's the one I believe in. And that's for me where everything absolutely falls apart. Like it's one thing, like I don't accept the basic premise. Like I don't know that the universe.
So what is the best
demands a
explanation?
creator.
So what is the best explanation of this? If we arrive at the conclusion that there's a creator, what is the best current model in the world about the nature of that creator?
The universe farting unicorn. The universe farting
you can go with
unicorn
that one.
is the
I'll go with
thing that
Christianity.
creates universes. How do we know that the universe farting unicorn creates universes? Because here we are. He farted. That's the Big Bang. That's the scientific Big Bang. And we know that stars and galaxies are fundamentally made out of hot gas. I mean, it all fits.
Yeah. When I look at it, I'm looking at again, kind of looking at how I mentioned before, like the collective fruits. Let's say the collective fruits model, right?
Yeah, the collective fruit model, the fruit basket model. Or the fruit cake
but
model.
what I'm saying is like if you look at the fruits of a society, okay, I mean Chris mentioned it before, some like 90s era Murray, Utah was pretty well top notch in our books, and like acted out the religion produced a lot of good things.
So that's a pragmatic argument.
I think that in my perspective, it produced the ideal.
Yeah, the problem with that is you get historically where there was large times. There's large periods of time in the Middle Ages while Europe and Christianity was in the Dark Ages, all of the liberal ecumenical
that's kind of a misnomer.
Societies were Islamic.
The Dark Ages weren't as dark as everyone seems to want to make it.
Well, no, but sure, fine.
And any of
but
those
my point is that there was a period of time when Europe and
didn't
Christianity
abide
was swimming in
principles.
darkness, and it was Islam that was producing science and civilizations with all kinds of people living together. You know, I mean,
Yeah,
just dumb stuff you learn walking around the world. Is that a Brovenal? Like a Brovenal hall is.
But they're bubbles, and you're lucky to have them when you have them.
Yeah,
so
there
you
you
hold
go.
on to them like the soldier of Pompeii.
And every time you evaluate how good Islam was, you're using Christian standards to evaluate it.
No, that's just you're smuggling that in there.
So here's some of my hangups. I don't know where you get the woo-woo supernatural stuff in there. That I don't know, because like you were talking about the ideal and stuff like that, and you can do that without the belief in things happening that we're not seeing in our everyday life, right? Like,
well,
so
for one, I don't
one.
believe in the supernatural. And number two, if you want to call something mysterious and
You do though, Jacob.
there's
On
nothing
one of your
more
podcasts,
mysterious
I heard
than
you
woo-woo.
invoke the supernatural. This is the thing I've
Hold
noticed
on,
with you
one
is that
second.
you'll say you don't believe in supernatural in some conversations, and other conversations you're perfectly happy to say, "Oh
It
yeah, it
depends
was
on how someone
supernatural
defines
God
it.
power."
The supernatural is just the natural that we don't understand.
Eh.
And by the way, there's nothing more woo-woo than you.
We have another word for that. Though.
I understand there's a lot.
Preternatural. The word for natural things we don't understand is preternatural. That there is a word for that. That's why it's separate from supernatural. But that's
well, fine. Then I'll use that. Then when I say supernatural, that's what I mean.
Okay. So on that basis, nothing supernatural happened. How did Moroni end up in Joseph's room? Did he come through the door? Did he walk in the house? Did he come down the path? Did he land on? Was it an elevator?
The nature,
or did
real
he
quick.
appear miraculously? Because Joseph said he appeared miraculously and he was producing light.
If I go back 500 years and people saw us having this conversation, they would assume that some sort of miracle is happening.
No, because
why
we live in a place where lots of people talk on the
there's
internet.
no answer to.
Joseph didn't live in a world where it was normal for dead Native Americans to appear floating in a room producing their own light. I think that's pretty damn supernatural.
Was that what it was? A tablet? Joseph Smith had a tablet?
No, when Moroni appears in his room, right? He was just asleep and he woke up and found a glowing angel guy, right?
Well, so I'm not too bothered by like worshiping I'd define that as like a god of the gaps, right? Like we don't quite understand, but then we do understand. I don't know.
Well, if you're going to define God in some sense as not only as the creator, which we think that there's evidence that there is one, but if you're also seeking something that holds that place of the ideal, then you would want to find something that embodies that ideal. And when you look at the story of Jesus Christ, when you look at the teachings of Jesus Christ, I have a very hard time saying that there's something more ideal than that exists.
Yeah, but you just circled yourself into that.
Faith in that which is the highest ideal.
When you start out by saying, like, if you're going to define God in such a way, I don't believe in God. The only definition of God that I ever use in any conversation is whatever definition the person that I'm talking to that believes in God and offers. That's the only definition I can go through because I don't believe in God. I've heard all kinds of claims. I've heard all kinds of definitions. The only definition that matters to me is your definition.
Yeah.
That's how I'm defining it. So if you keep trying to say that this is a framing thing, you're the one framing it, not me.
I'm trying to put meat on the bones from level one. At the level one conversation, we can at least say that God is the thing that the intelligent agent that caused all of this.
Okay, so God has intelligence.
Can we get past
those are the
level
2 things.
one?
So those are the 2 things that level one.
He won't grant
God
it.
is intelligent and has agency. Are those the 2 things?
There are multiple inferences you can make based on.
Wait. Are there more things to level one? Let's get all of the level one out of the way. Because I thought we'd settled on.
We're resolving this tonight, you guys. If it's not getting resolved tonight, you're all going to your rooms for a week.
Oh God!
And then we're coming back to level one again.
Level one again.
I would be happy to discuss any one of these levels. Honestly, though, it's getting late for me. I got to get rolling here.
You're gonna be debating Seth Garrett coming up. He's been on our channel. Is that coming up?
Yeah. Next week we're actually debating. And Flip, you got to tune in for this one. We're going to be debating the what is the best explanation for reality, theism or atheism. And I know Flip's going to be over there like, you can't prove anything, and he should just be like, the
No, it's a false
on
dichotomy.
you.
Atheism has nothing to say on any topic other than the existence or non-existence of God.
I think this is one of those situations where you know what he means, though.
Can believe
word of the day.
Anything. Atheists can be religious. Atheists can believe in an intelligent creator with agency.
And have all the,
Wait,
they can do all of those things.
Wait a minute. An atheist can believe in a creative,
an intelligent creator. If it's not God, like again.
Well, I guess if it's not metaphysical.
Most Buddhists and Hindus believe in supernatural creative beings.
Okay, but again,
they are not gods.
I think I would say
within their worldview, no, these aren't gods. God is another thing.
I think I would say this is one of those situations where you know what he means.
I mean, kind of, but you if you're smuggling in a bunch of stuff that doesn't fit and calling it atheism, then that's just that you're smuggling it in. Like if there's a whole set of assumptions,
you don't get much about the nature of God. It's true.
If there's a whole bunch of assumptions that an atheist might hold but not necessarily hold, those assumptions exist independent of atheism. They might go along with atheism, but they are not contingent upon it. Does that make sense?
Sure.
I guess it doesn't make sense. What does okay even mean?
Yeah, that's one of the areas that we've gone before into it, but I don't buy the stuff where atheists start like throwing in these deisms, and those deisms don't count as gods.
Right.
And that irritates me quite a bit, or even like magical supernatural beings.
Well, no, because
even if they're creating them,
this is
like
the distinction because
the future trans god that's going to be created by the trans
in Christian, like within the Christian Islamic idea, like especially Islam, but Christian goes along with it, is that God is the thing. He's the thing outside of everything else, and everything is based upon and contingent and created by God. God is the ultimate end to all things. Whereas, like within Hinduism, for example, atheistic Hinduism, there are supernatural beings.
So, Jacob,
they
in your
exist in a
videos with
world
Durbin,
that's out. They exist in a universe that they don't control and didn't create, and all that shit.
In your videos with Jeff Durbin, you pointed out that guy who pointed out all those other little gods that were in the Bible to point that right.
Yeah.
What was that guy's name? Saying that. Even those guys, the Calvinists, if they believe the Bible, have to believe in other kind of lesser gods than Elohim, right?
Yeah.
And so my point is, when atheists try to get to that level of hard defining stuff of lesser gods or something like that, it's got to be this one great big God. So you're saying like I could believe in all those lesser gods of the Bible, just not the one big one, and I can count as an atheist? It all doesn't make sense to me, and especially doesn't make sense to me when I start adding in like the philosophical deist gods and all that sort of stuff. Like it's either like let's go all the way with this, or let's.
Well, no, but I mean, this is part of the problem we run into, Chris, is that like because Jacob believes in a God that created everything, that he's the beginning and end, and that he's outside of everything. Everything is contingent upon God. That's the Muslim God. Right.
Actually, I don't. As a Latter-day Saint, we reject creation ex nihilo, and
I guess
have
that's
a very
true.
different conception of God.
Well, I mean, I'll grant that, but what comes before God? What's the answer to that in Mormonism?
In Mormonism, it's either actually there's two models, and I fall into
Will I find these on the LDS website?
That there is kind of like a prime mover. There's a first Father, a most high amongst gods.
And is that a god? Is that guy?
And then there's the infinite regress model.
Okay. But is that guy a god?
But deists would allow for a prime mover or something that kicked over the first domino or something like that.
Like what if like all the weird gods of the Canaanites were just the products of the universe farting unicorn, and they just existed in the universe that was the resultant material from
I think each one of us
ass blast
are gonna land on our knees and cry and weep when we die, and there's a farting unicorn. I'm like, oh my goodness.
I knew I smelled your presence.
I love that it's saved. Anyway, I don't know if you guys heard, but I'm an alt-right gym bro now, so I gotta go to bed because I gotta wake up early.
Hey guys, I
was just gonna say, Troy said he wanted to debate too. Flip still should do it. I mean, I guess we kind of got it out right here, though we weren't planning on this. We were 100% planning on this, and but still, maybe some more of that stuff can come up. But then maybe we could ever have some conversations down the line where after we all agree upon this, which I guess I'm talking about the 11th of never. But yeah, it's good to meet up in all the places where we do meet up, and sorry to also throw the red meat to all the guys who want to get back into the 2007 atheism argument.
Right. Although
no, it's good. We had to.
No, I'm
we
happy.
had to throw it out there. But thanks for coming on, and thanks for taking the time, and thanks for and I hope Flip, you did not disappoint, and we let it happen. We let it go there. People love that stuff too. So we'll figure it all out. So, but thanks for coming on. So
yeah, thank you guys.
Alrighty.
Take care.
All right.
Good night, everyone.
All right.
What an idiot! No,
sit down and shut up. I'm not interested in debate.
Just kidding.
Kevin has to leave first before you say that.
Yeah, Jacob's
I'm gonna like if I were Jacob, I would have a T-shirt with that printed up on it and just walk around wearing it.
But I think you guys should take up those debate offerings that he's given. Seth's taking one up. You just barely you say you wouldn't have it because there's nothing to have it, and then you have it for an hour. I mean, it's there, and it's obviously there to go do and have, and a lot of people would like it, and obviously people like it here.
You have to stick to one topic though.
Going. Well, yeah, I mean, because they want to do the back and forth type stuff.
We got to get to levels 1.
But it's good. Like if we get all the other stuff gone and behind us, and we say, all right, we got room for this now. It's cool to get into it. We got the stuff about Jim Bennett out. We got the agreement out first. What's that?
We all agree that Jim Bennett is a gigatwat.
Right? One topic without circles.
We're all Jim Bennett atheists.
Yeah, I don't believe that Jim Bennett is a serious person.
Yeah, we were able to talk for a good long hour to the point people didn't think we'd get to the disagreement part, but we were always going to let Flip get there. It was never not going to happen. And actually, Jacob, I told Jacob, I'm like, it's Thursday night, but if it's coming Thursday night, it's going to go there. He's like, okay, it's fine, it'll go there. And so I prepped him that that's not sideswiping him. He knew what he was getting into. So, but you still should go on his channel and do it for some more. And Marty's got one coming up with Hayden that's really good. I've already gotten to listen to it. And she spent a few hours with Hayden. And if you want to see
I feel so bad when
I have to say that Hayden, I appreciate Hayden is because a lot of those guys on Thoughtful Faith, they make a statement. And I say, well, I don't frame it like that. And then they just spend the rest of the time going, yes, you do. Whereas Hayden is a guy who went, okay. And then changed his tact, moved on to another line of reasoning, and I really appreciate that about him. He didn't just sit there and insist that I don't believe the things I believe.
Well, Jacob just recently, Troy, if you saw on Thoughtful Saints, he put something out, and it's actually after the last time that Hayden was talking to us, and he said, we will have some debates. I'm ready to start having these debates. Anybody want to have a debate? And that's how Seth got in with him, because Seth said, I'll jump in on one of the debates, and Flip was kind of saying, nothing will come of it. But then every time they come on, you have all the discussion in the world with it, and there's obviously the space and room there to do it. So
I think he's busy too. You think you just got to be consistent, Troy. I think he'll do it.
Yeah, for sure. All right, everybody, that was a party all the time, and now we've resolved level 1. Level 1 is resolved.
Level 1's done.
No, it's not.
Shut up.
I thought that was clear.
There's
let's go back
philosophical
to the
groundwork wherein a creator might be evidence if we accept all of the necessary presuppositions. We made it to level 1.
No, you guys just turned me into a nihilist. Now that's what happened.
I'm a Muslim now.
Okay. Alhamdulillah.
So change minds.
You want to know how
No.
screwed up Arabic is? This is the thing that makes me crazy about Arabic. I even tested this because I wanted to check with my Iraqi friend. But the first half of the Muslim statement of faith goes, La ilaha illallah. It sounds like gibberish. It literally is
Have
just
you
la
ever-
la 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 la.
Have you
But
ever
it's
heard
actually
Mexicans speaking in English when they don't know English? They're just trying to impersonate English. They go witty, 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 witty.
In Brazil, they sounded like us impersonating Chinese people. They'd be, oh, ton, 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 ton. I'd be like, what? Is that how you think I guess. I don't know.
They seem to, and I guess they were right, that the W was a big thing. Big old W.
Yeah.
If you think about it, it is all over
Not
the
a lot
place.
of, not a lot of languages make that W sound, I don't think.
Yeah, like in that Princess Bride quote, marriage.
Oh yeah, Malwaj. Wow. Maybe that's what they're going off of.
Like if you break it down, it is words, but like because like la is the negator, ilaha is the generic word for God, ilah
and
is
marriage
the
is between
bunch.
man and woman.
And then Allah is the God, so you end up with la ilaha la la, and that's how you become a Muslim. You have to say the second half too, and I won't say it so that I don't turn into a Muslim.
Well, I think we've all decided today that we're Christian, or that we're theists, but unfortunately we're progressive Christians. So
I don't know. The Universe Fighting Unicorn has no opinion on gay marriage. That's the one thing we know.
Jared. Baby steps.
Baby steps.
The one thing we know about the UFU.
I'm a theist only because of Flip.
There you go.
We're all
you're
somebody.
We're level 1 theists. That's what we established. We are level 1 God believers now.
Oh, I'm a devout Mormon to spite Jackson Washburn and Dan McClellan. So
I still want to go to church for that Nauvoo expositor guy.
We all choose our God off of who we want to spite. Spite him down. Spite him down.
The God of I'm right, damn it.
Actually, there's some truth to that. Like the
It's just
rebellion
the God of
to go to church.
It's just the God of you're wrong. It's not I'm right. It's the God of
screw
you're wrong.
you, buddy.
I have a lot of faith that some people have to be wrong about everything. So that's a good. But that could get me to believe in a God. I think that
the Sparkle Creed.
I think that John Dehlin has to be wrong about just about everything. So I think Mormonism must be true.
Creed.
All right, I'm leaving.
Okay, see y'all later.
All right, thanks everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Late.